Subscribe for more amazing novel audiobooks. Don't forget to like, comment, and share Infinite Novel Audio Chapter 26, Crazy Training City 1001. Located only 300 kilometers from the elite training camp, was a city with an extremely high concentration of monsters. It was personally designated by Hong and served as a hunting and training ground for elite training camp students. The weakest monsters in the entire city were elementary beast soldiers, while intermediate and advanced beast soldiers roamed in groups, and there were even many Lord-level monsters entrenched there. Qin Hao, having officially joined the elite training camp, arrived at this city with over 80 other students to begin his first hunt. Along the way, under Zhao Ruo's introduction, Qin Hao gained a certain understanding of City 1001 and also became aware of the training camp's strict rules. 1. Those who privately trade monster materials, give monster materials to other students, or help other students increase their combat points will be expelled upon discovery. 2. Those who engage in fighting and kill other students will be executed upon discovery. Upon entering City 1001, all the students dispersed, and Qin Hao also began to act. Qin Hao's goal this time was also very simple: combat points. He had already obtained the dragon blood, and for Qin Hao, the two fastest ways to improve his strength next were to acquire the spirits of Flora and to use the gravity room. To get more training time in the gravity room, he needed enough combat points, with 3. 5 times his strength output and the trial tower at 4.1, Qin Hao's combat power amplification had reached 14.35, placing him at the forefront of the elite training camp. What he lacked now were combat points. 20 days, that's enough time. Qin Hao began his slaughter in City 1001. His god of war-level strength, coupled with 3.5 times his strength output and perfect-level movement and blade techniques, allowed Qin Hao to operate without any hesitation throughout City 1001. Even if he encountered an advanced lord, he could contend with it, not to mention he had the Black God suit. Furthermore, the entire City 1001 was under satellite surveillance, and any movement of Lord-level beings was monitored, with the Dojo of Limits handling any dangers that arose. For the following period, Qin Hao's life entered an extremely monotonous state. He went to City 1001 daily to hunt and accumulate combat points. As his combat points continuously accumulated, Qin Hao's ranking also steadily rose. Without testing his strength output, Qin Hao's ranking broke into the top 100 on the 10th day. After entering the top 100, Qin Hao once again received attention from major forces worldwide. However, Qin Hao didn't care. Besides hunting, he only focused on training within the elite training camp. As new students, they were all taught by their exclusive teachers. Just like Luo Feng's teacher, the moon demoness Jiang Fang, who taught blade techniques, movement techniques, and guided cultivation. However, Qin Hao had never received a teacher assigned to him. Qin Hao didn't mind this situation and continued to train according to his own methods. After all, reaching the 4th floor of the trial tower was extremely rare in the elite training camp. Even most god of war-level teachers had not passed it. After using up his training time in the ancient civilization gravity room, Qin Hao had been training in the replicated gravity room. Although the maximum gravity was only 3 times, the effect was still faster than normal training. Coupled with weighted training, Qin Hao's strength also slowly increased. By the end of September, Qin Hao's strength had exceeded 110,000 kilograms, and his ranking was close to the top 50. He hadn't updated his strength output, but Qin Hao's frenzied slaughter in City 1001 allowed him to gradually close the gap. Initially, some people wanted to take advantage of Qin Hao being a newcomer by challenging him to a gambling match. However, after witnessing Qin Hao's insane slaughter, they all gave up that idea. Thus, Qin Hao entered a state of selfless training. The increase in strength during these 20 days was relatively limited compared to Qin Hao's previous rapid surge in strength. However, Qin Hao was not discouraged by this situation. Qin Hao knew that the surge in strength was one of his goals, but the foundation was even more important. Both the cultivation of ninefold thunderblade and the improvement of his movement and blade technique realms were very fast, but too fast. Now, he needed a period of accumulation. Taking ninefold thunderblade as an example, the fourth stage was already very proficient, but the difficulty of breaking through to the fifth stage felt much greater, far from being so easy. This was due to his insufficient accumulation, lack of cultivation experience, and lack of understanding. Cultivation is not just about the result, but also the process. In continuous slaughter, Qin Hao was not only increasing his combat points but also constantly honing himself, refining his strength, combat readiness, and mental fortitude in all aspects. Yuo Feng's rapid growth in the original work was related to his experiences. His efforts in his youth, his struggle for Earth in his youth, and even after the genius battle, becoming a genius of the Universe Virtual Company, he still progressed steadily, successfully surpassing a multitude of geniuses. After 20 days of fighting, Qin Hao gained a new understanding of blade techniques and movement techniques, continuously perfecting them at the perfect level, and gaining stronger mastery of perfect level movement and blade techniques. At the same time, ninefold thunderblade was closer to breaking through to the fifth stage. Furthermore, he gained more insights into his self-created thunderclap and dreamlike illusion, which were perfected during this period, and are now considered two formal blade techniques. On September 30th, after a day of training, Qin Hao arrived at the 9th floor of the 9-story building. It's Qin Hao. Why is he at the 9-story building? Does he want to challenge the trial tower? Hasn't he cleared the trial tower yet? He's been in the training camp for 20 days. That's impossible. I heard his ranking is almost in the top 50 now, and the monsters he's hunted are far more than those hunted by veterans who have been in the training camp for 5 years. Ignoring the discussions around him, Qin Hao went directly to the training room and entered the trial tower. It was still the familiar scene. Qin Hao was already very familiar with it and directly entered the trial tower to begin the challenge. As Qin Hao entered the training room, the genius martial artists from various countries around him began to notify their respective forces and rushed towards the Black Dragon statue at the entrance of the elite training camp, wanting to see the changes in Qin Hao's results as soon as possible. Upon entering the trial space, Qin Hao did not directly test his strength output, but instead prepared to challenge the trial tower again to see the results of his training. Upon entering the 4th floor, Qin Hao quickly entered combat mode and charged into the monster horde. His perfect level movement technique, perfect level blade technique, 3.5 times his strength output, and his more proficient self-created blade techniques, thunderclap and dreamlike illusion, were all unleashed, using every trick in his arsenal. However, after 20 minutes of combat, Qin Hao was covered in wounds, one arm was broken, and then he was directly ground down by the monster horde, his figure dissipating. Indeed, I'm still far off. At least one of my blade techniques or movement techniques needs to reach the intent realm for there to be hope. Qin Hao recalled the details of the battle, reviewing it carefully. Hong, who had comprehended the domain, was only on the 6th floor and Thunder God was still on the 5th floor. Thunder God's strength was slightly inferior to Hong's, but his strength output reached 7, and both his movement and blade techniques were at least at the peak of the intent realm, close to the domain level. Based on this, the 5th floor in terms of strength output, blade technique, and movement technique would not be much lower than Thunder God's, at least at the intent realm. Therefore, for the 4th floor, one aspect would still need to reach the intent realm, and strength output would need another breakthrough. Chapter 27, Part 2, Chapter 27, Part 2, at the entrance of the elite training camp, in front of the Black Dragon statue. Talented martial artists from various countries and staff members from major powers gathered. Photography equipment was placed in all directions, live streaming the changing data on the Black Dragon statue and reporting it to the high-ranking officials of their respective powers. It's changed. He's in the top 50. Whose name is in the top 50? Qin Hao, the newcomer Qin Hao. How is that possible? Isn't he a newcomer who just arrived this month? He's been in the elite training camp for less than a month. That killing maniac, he just entered the elite training camp and his combat points have already surpassed the old students. A newcomer breaking into the top 100 in their first month has only happened 5 times in the history of our training camp. Those 5 were all peerless geniuses of the highest caliber, the earliest being 20 years ago. Among these 5, 4 are already high-level gods of war. Another even broke through the god of war level and became a beyond war god level existence. After exiting the trial tower, Qin Hao's trial tower level also improved slightly, reaching 4.2, and his ranking rose again, entering the top 50. This is nothing. Next, I'll make the entire elite training camp boil. I want to conduct a force test. Qin Hao shouted into the void, and a punching target appeared before him. Student Qin Hao, please begin the test. Boom. He punched the target, unleashing the full power of the 4th stage of the 9-fold thunderblade. The 3.5x amplification of his force caused the numbers on the target to soar, finally settling at 35,000 kg. Test complete. Force level 3.5x, trial tower level 4.2. Student Qin Hao, your current battle power amplitude is 14.7. In the elite training camp, a battle power amplitude of 1 to 2 is elementary. 4 to 8 is advanced, and 8 to 16 is excellent. However, very few actually reach 16. Generally, a battle power amplitude of 14 to 15 can challenge for the top 5 in the training camp. Reaching 13 usually means top 10. Reaching 12 usually means top 20. In the original work, Luo Feng's contract had a maximum reward condition of a battle power amplitude of 16, with a 3-year time limit. Looking at his battle power amplitude, Qin Hao exited the trial space and left the 9-story building, returning to Jiangnan Pavilion to continue his cultivation. Qin Hao returned, but the elite training camp erupted in a frenzy. With Qin Hao's force test, his ranking rapidly soared. Qin Hao's name disappeared. He was just at 55th place. Why is he gone? He just improved once, so he should have already exited the trial tower. Why would his name disappear? Not in the top 50, not in the top 40, still not in the top 30. Impossible. How could he enter the top 30 in his first time in the elite training camp? Still not in the top 20. Qin Hao is about to take off. Entering the top 20 in his first month in the elite training camp has never happened since the camp opened. Is another beyond war god level about to rise? He's in the top 10. I see his name. Second place. Qin Hao has rushed to second place. As Qin Hao's ranking was disclosed, the entire training camp's geniuses and various global powers began to take action. Quick, connect to the boss. The burly man's face was ferocious. Captain, it's not even 12 yet. A woman dressed somewhat revealingly chuckled. Damn it, hurry up and connect to the boss, immediately. The burly man's eyes flashed with fierce light. Only then did the previously giggling woman realize the seriousness of the matter and immediately began connecting to their boss. Shit, this genius is from China. Connect me to the general. I need to speak with the general immediately. Second place. He's only 18 years old, and his family was ordinary in the past. He didn't receive any special martial arts training when he was young. At this moment, in Hongning Base City, intelligence personnel from various powerful nations' military organizations, special administrative organizations, family consortiums, and even mercenary groups, after checking the latest updated rankings on the elite training camp's Black Dragon leaderboard. As qualified intelligence personnel, all responsible individuals immediately reported to headquarters. For the 5 major powers and 2 big dojos, there are never enough geniuses. A genius is not just about strong physical fitness, but also about improvements in force, movement techniques, and blade technique realm. Every person who can enter the elite training camp is a genius, but geniuses are also divided into levels. Although almost everyone who comes out of the elite training camp has strength comparable to a god of war, some barely reach the god of war level, while others can fight against beyond war god level powerhouses. This is the gap, and also the gap between geniuses. The talent Qin Hao is currently displaying is undoubtedly top tier. Entering the elite training camp in his first month, and directly rushing to second place means that his physical strength, force, blade techniques, and movement techniques are already top tier among gods of war. Faced with such a genius, no power would miss out. Even if they can't fully win him over, establishing good relations is inevitable. Furthermore, some powers have already begun to act. The leaders of various powers in Hongning Base City have already started contacting Qin Hao, but Qin Hao's communicator is turned off. Many geniuses also began searching for Qin Hao, hoping to win him over. Qin Hao had long anticipated this situation and simply hid in the secret room beneath the Jiangnan Pavilion, continuing his cultivation. He also understood that no matter what conditions these powers offered, they couldn't compare to the dojo of limits. After all, Hong, as the world's strongest individual, possesses many resources that other powers do not. Moreover, for Qin Hao, the most important thing right now is to improve his own strength. There are very few resources that can help him. His body has successively absorbed spirits of flora and dragon blood, and the residual energy has not been fully digested in a short period, making it unsuitable for rapid improvement. He does not lack money, with the Dojo of Limits providing 10 billion in annual activity funds. As for secret manuals, he hasn't finished reading the ninefold Thunderblade, World Annihilation, and Mist Sword he chose, so he doesn't need more manuals in the short term. Currently, what Qin Hao needs more is continuous accumulation. Accumulation in mindset, combat experience, and cultivation experience. Besides this, what he might need are methods to break through to the planetary level, methods to comprehend domains, or resources like Wudya Essence that can help break through to the planetary level. These resources might only be in Hong's hands now, and Hong might not even have Wudya Essence. If he did, he would have directly used it to improve his own strength. While Qin Hao was cultivating the legendary highest meeting of the Dojo of Limits, the Round Table Conference was held in virtual space. Inside a large conference hall, the floor was silver, the walls were silver, and the huge round table was also silver. Only the 6 chairs were pure black, a black that seemed to swallow everything. And at this moment, around the silver round table, on 5 of the 6 chairs, sat 5 white-robed figures. These 5 were the 5 great inspectors, of the Dojo of Limits, and the owner of the 6th chair was the Dojo of Limits' museum owner, Dojo Master, the world's strongest individual, Hong. Chapter 28, Hong's summoning every round table meeting of the Dojo of Limits directly concerns important decisions for the Dojo of Limits, and this meeting was no exception. 5 inspectors dressed in white robes, 3 from China, 1 Caucasian, and 1 African, sat around a round table in the virtual space. Everyone, this is Qin Hao's data. Trial Tower level, 4.2, Fist Strength Output level, 3.5, Battle Power Amplification, 14. 7, excellent. And he is already ranked among the top of the elite training camp. His monster hunting achievement points can already compare to a veteran student who has been in the elite training camp for 5 years. Combining both, he ranks 2nd. Ranking 2nd in the first month is worth increasing the dojo's investment. During the entrance assessment, he was already given sufficient preferential treatment, and the rewards were all at the highest standard. Is it too much to reward him again now? There is no such thing as too much for a genius. The strong remain strong. The 5 inspectors continued to discuss. Although they all belonged to the Dojo of Limits, they each had their own positions. Inspector Wang and the other 2 Chinese naturally wished to give Qin Hao more support. On one hand, Qin Hao was recruited into the elite training camp by Inspector Wang. On the other hand, they were all Chinese, so their positions were closer. The remaining inspectors were not too keen on seeing such a situation. Each of the 5 inspectors was in existence beyond the god of war level, holding significant influence in any country. The roundtable meetings of the Dojo of Limits were also generally held by the 5 inspectors. Hong, as the dojo master, rarely appeared. Even after founding the Dojo of Limits, Hong still devoted most of his time to cultivation, with matters handled by the 5 inspectors of the Dojo of Limits. Furthermore, the 5 inspectors were dispersed across the world, which was also why the roundtable meetings were held in the virtual space. The discussion among the 5 inspectors continued when an electronic voice sounded. 5 inspectors. As the voice sounded, the 5 inspectors stopped talking and looked up. Regarding the handling of Qin Hao's matter, the dojo master has decided to personally summon Qin Hao. Inspector Wang is to bring Qin Hao to the Hongning Base City headquarters tomorrow at 10 a.m., where the dojo master will meet Qin Hao in his study. Do the 5 inspectors have any objections? If you have objections, you may report them to the dojo master. If not, please execute this decision. Do you have any objections? The electronic voice asked. None. 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 The 5 inspectors quickly skimmed through and responded one after another. Then, Inspector Wang, please execute it immediately, the electronic voice said. Yes, Inspector Wang said solemnly. At Jiangnan Pavilion in the elite training camp, Qin Hao woke up in the morning and walked out of the pavilion. He opened his communicator and saw countless missed calls but paid no attention, simply ignoring them. Qin Hao, how did you do it? You ranked 2nd in your first month of joining the camp. As soon as he stepped out of his room, Zhao Ruo's voice sounded, and the figures of Zhao Ruo and Shi Jiang appeared before Qin Hao. Shi Jiang, standing beside them, also looked at Qin Hao with shock, his eyes full of disbelief. From the first time he met Qin Hao, Shi Jiang had a good impression of this fellow countryman. Witnessing Qin Hao's frenzied cultivation and slaughter later on moved Shi Jiang even more. Especially seeing Qin Hao's achievement points surpass those of many veteran students in just 20 days, his ranking soared to around the top 50. Just then, outside Jiangnan Pavilion, Yang Hui quickly walked in from outside and, seeing the 3 god ancestors, came directly to their side. Qin Hao, hurry and come with me, Yang Hui said, directly pulling Qin Hao towards the outside. Teacher Yang, what's the rush? I haven't had breakfast yet, and I also plan to go hunting today, Qin Hao asked as he walked. Although he had some guesses, it shouldn't be so urgent as to make Yang Hui come looking for him in such a hurry early in the morning. Come with me to the Dojo of Limits in Hongning Base City immediately. The dojo master is summoning you, Yang Hui said, quickening his pace again. As a god of war, Yang Hui was considered part of the dojo's core, and he had also met Hong. However, every time he met Hong, he felt extremely excited in the Dojo of Limits. Such phenomena were quite common. After all, joining the Dojo of Limits was partly for resources and partly out of admiration for Hong, the world's strongest. Leaving the elite training camp, Yang Hui and Qin Hao directly got into a special car and quickly headed towards Hongning Base City. Upon entering Hongning Base City, Qin Hao also curiously observed his surroundings. As the world's #1 base city, and also the safest, Hongning Base City had a far higher proportion of warriors than other base cities, and the overall equipment within the entire base city far surpassed that of other base cities. God of War Yang Hui, student Qin Hao, we have arrived at headquarters. After hearing the driver's words, Yang Hui and Qin Hao got out of the special car. What met Qin Hao's eyes was a giant spaceship-like building. The entire building was tens of thousands of meters long, with a truly wide, massive hatch that allowed people to enter and exit. Although he knew the Dojo of Limits headquarters was a giant spaceship, Qin Hao was still greatly shocked upon seeing it in person. This was a completely different feeling from what he had seen in novels or movies in his previous life. The shock brought by the gigantic, technologically advanced spaceship far exceeded his imagination. Is this the true headquarters of the Dojo of Limits? Qin Hao couldn't help but exclaim. Just then, a blue light shot out from the spaceship, enveloping Qin Hao and Yang Hui. Beep. God of War Yang Hui, student Qin Hao, please enter. Only a very small number of high-level personnel have permission to enter the headquarters. Those without permission who force their way in will only be killed by the defense system. Even for me, opportunities to enter the headquarters are very rare. This time, I'm benefiting from you to enter the headquarters, Yang Hui said to Qin Hao as he led him into the spaceship. Qin Hao and Yang Hui entered the spaceship through the giant hatch into a white corridor, Inside the headquarters base, Qin Hao also saw many staff members, most of whom wore blue robes with a very few wearing red robes. Inspector Wang. Yang Hui and Qin Hao were led by a staff member to a lounge, where someone was already waiting in a seat. Yang Hui respectfully said as he approached this person. Inspector Wang, Qin Hao also said respectfully. Inspectors were not only high-ranking members of the dojo, but also powerful individuals who rose during the Great Nirvana, making immense contributions to human survival. Yang Hui, Qin Hao, sit down. The dojo master will summon you around 10 o'clock. This summoning by the dojo master can be said to be the greatest opportunity for you. You must seize it well, Inspector Wang exhorted. After all, he was the genius he had decided to recruit into the dojo, so he was very concerned about him. Yes, Qin Hao quickly responded. Qin Hao still felt very surprised by Hong's summons. However, from the current situation, it seemed to be a good thing for him. Chapter 29, Choice Chapter 29. The choice Qin Hao, the museum owner, has summoned you. At 10 o'clock, a red-robed man came to the lounge and said to Qin Hao, I'm finally going to meet Hong. Qin Hao took a deep breath, stood up, greeted Yang Hui and Inspector Wang, and then followed the red-robed man down the corridor, quickly arriving outside a massive room. After leading Qin Hao to the door, the red-robed man bowed slightly and departed. Qin Hao, come in. A cold voice came from inside the room. Yes, upon hearing the voice, Qin Hao did not hesitate. He pushed the door open and entered the room. What greeted Qin Hao's eyes was a huge study, or rather, a massive library. Dozens of bookshelves were neatly arranged throughout the room, each filled with books. With just a quick glance, Qin Hao noticed that besides some newly printed books, there were also many ancient texts. At the end of the bookshelves was a simple, quiet room. The quiet room was very basic, a long table and 2 chairs. On one of the chairs sat a black-haired man. Although he was merely sitting there, Qin Hao could still feel a subtle, ethereal aura of power, as if he were the center of the entire world. However, Qin Hao quickly recovered from this sense of power. The man before him was Hong, the current strongest person on Earth, the head of the Dojo of Limits and a future true god. While Qin Hao observed Hong, Hong's attention shifted from his book and he glanced at Qin Hao. Sit. The voice was cold yet full of authority. Upon hearing it, Qin Hao quickly walked over and sat down in front of Hong. Qin Hao held great respect for Hong, but it hadn't reached the point of worship. Not bad. You're not far from being an advanced god of war. In your first month at the elite training camp, you surpassed many veteran students. Since the Great Nirvana, you are the most talented person I have ever seen. The reason I summoned you this time is first, to meet you, and second, to discuss your future cultivation plan. Hong paused after speaking. Upon hearing Hong's words, Qin Hao couldn't help but become focused. Qin Hao was very clear about his future path. Improve his strength, break through to planetary level, astral rank, comprehend domains and laws. Currently, the most important thing was the breakthrough to planetary level. The purpose of the elite training camp is not to cultivate gods of war, but rather beyond war god level experts. Originally, I intended to take you as my disciple when I summoned you. However, I have just abandoned that decision. I believe you already have a clear path in your heart. You can propose 3 conditions, and the dojo will do its best to fulfill them. Your task is to quickly break through to beyond war god level, Hong said to Qin Hao after a moment of thought. Regarding Qin Hao, Hong initially wanted to take him as a disciple, partly because Qin Hao's genius had attracted Hong's attention, and partly out of fear that Qin Hao might take the wrong path. However, after meeting Qin Hao, what he saw in Qin Hao's eyes was more composure, determination, and confidence. After hearing Hong's words, Qin Hao also fell into thought. If Hong had directly proposed an arrangement, Qin Hao would only have had to accept it. Now that he was asked to propose conditions himself, Qin Hao didn't know what to ask for. After all, although Hong said he could propose 3 conditions, it would certainly be within a certain scope. If he were to ask for too much, even if Hong agreed, his impression of him would worsen. In the short term, I don't need too many resources. What I need more is certain guidance, a cultivation environment, knowledge, and the accumulation of experience. Qin Hao constantly calculated in his mind, and gradually he made a decision. What, have you thought it through? No need to rush, you have plenty of time to consider carefully. This concerns your growth over the next few years, Hong said, noticing Qin Hao's change. Museum owner, I have thought it through. I would like to access all the books here, have cultivation access to the gravity room, and also your cultivation insights. Qin Hao slowly stated his requests. He had originally wanted Hong's personal guidance. However, as the head of the Dojo of Limits, Hong's time was also very limited, and it would be impossible to ask for guidance at any time. Instead, the books in this entire study, as well as Hong's cultivation experience, would be more beneficial for Qin Hao's future path and the creation of his own cultivation techniques. Especially Hong's experience in breaking through to planetary level and comprehending the domain was even more valuable to Qin Hao. However, whether Hong would share it was unknown, but having hope was better than having no hope at all. All right, Hong agreed directly. Grant Qin Hao access to the study, the gravity room, and headquarters entry, Hong said loudly. After he spoke, a blue light swept over Qin Hao's entire body in the study. Yes, master, permissions activated. Then an electronic voice sounded. You can consult all the books here, but you cannot take them out. My cultivation experiences are also within this study, and you can consult them as well. However, you are still an elite training camp student, so necessary outings for hunting cannot stop. After Hong finished speaking, he stood up directly. You can consult the books here starting today. After saying that, Hong left the study directly. Watching Hong leave, Qin Hao couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Facing the strongest person in the world, Qin Hao appeared calm on the surface, but his heart was still somewhat excited. After a brief moment to compose himself, Qin Hao stood up and began to carefully examine the books in the study. Dozens of bookshelves, countless books covering various aspects. Walking past each bookshelf, he saw books ranging from various martial arts techniques to ancient philosophy, modern philosophy, and even many modern books on physics, chemistry, mathematics, and other subjects. Among them, many ancient texts were unique copies that Qin Hao had never even heard of. Although in this life he had studied ancient culture and philosophy from a young age, the scope of his research was very limited. After all, after the Great Nirvana, many ancient texts were not preserved. Furthermore, a large portion of them were originally circulated only within a small circle. Now, he could freely consult all these books. This offered a new direction for improvement in Qin Hao's state of mind, which had not changed for a long time. After roughly surveying the condition of the books in the entire study, Qin Hao began to rethink his time allocation for the upcoming period. Outdoor hunting could not stop, and with cultivation in the gravity room and reading books, his time would become even tighter. Finally, Qin Hao went directly to Hong's cultivation experiences and began to read them. Hong's cultivation experiences were recorded in great detail, from his inner force cultivation before the Great Nirvana, to his cultivation during the Great Nirvana, the creation of world extinction, the cultivation of each realm. And finally, even his experience of breaking through to planetary level, and his insights into the domain were all included. Upon seeing the later information, Qin Hao immediately became excited. However, he only gave this part a cursory glance. You have to eat your food one bite at a time, and cultivation must be done step by step. Qin Hao resisted the urge to study it in detail. Chapter 30, Daily Practice at the Dojo of Limits in Hongning Base City. After Qin Hao entered the main gate, he was led directly to the study by a staff member. Upon entering the study, Qin Hao began to study frantically. Although his strength had been rapidly improving in the few months since he became a warrior, many problems were exposed. The most important were some foundational and systematic accumulations, which might not have a significant impact now, but would become limiting factors in his future growth. Although he had a golden finger, he still relied on himself. From learning various theoretical knowledge to watching and referencing various secret manuals, and then comprehending Hong's cultivation experience, combined with his own growth and cultivation plan, Qin Hao was constantly improving his understanding of cultivation and perfecting his cultivation plan. Currently, Qin Hao's cultivation was also gradually changing and continuously adjusting. He still went out hunting every day, constantly converting his cultivation achievements into combat power. In this month, Qin Hao also fought against many Lord-level monsters, from initial low-level lords to mid-level lords, and even a high-level lord once. When not going out, he studied theory in the morning and trained frantically in the gravity room in the afternoon. Ha! Inside the gravity room, Qin Hao, wearing only shorts and bare-chested, continued his training. The screen next to him displayed 100 G, meaning the current gravity in the gravity room was 100 times Earth's gravity. Under high gravity, Qin Hao's figure constantly flickered and moved. Every punch and kick he unleashed was full of power. During this period, Qin Hao did not fully focus his energy on practicing blade techniques and movement techniques, but continued to cultivate ancient martial arts such as inner force and Chinese martial arts. The martial arts on Earth now are all based on ancient martial arts from various places. In the past, although Qin Hao had also practiced ancient martial arts, most of what was circulated on the market was very basic, or even incomplete. The true secret manuals of ancient martial arts were still in the hands of a few people. Hong was clearly one of those few. In Hong's study, there was a specially categorized collection of ancient martial arts secret manuals, hundreds of them, plus numerous explanations, which truly opened Qin Hao's eyes. Among these manuals, the explanations on strength and internal force, as well as the theories on physical training, all gave Qin Hao a fresh perspective. In particular, the combination of some traditional theories with modern medicine and martial arts cultivation greatly benefited Qin Hao. Now, Qin Hao's cultivation was reformulated based on these cultivation experiences. Through the high pressure of gravity and the training methods of traditional martial arts, Qin Hao continuously mastered his body and rapidly assimilated the spirits of flora and dragon blood power involved. After several weeks of cultivation, Qin Hao's strength had reached the standard of a mid-level god of war. However, the two powers involved were also gradually exhausted. Increase gravity by 50 times. As Qin Hao's voice sounded, the surrounding gravity suddenly increased, reaching 150 times. Although he had adapted to 100 times gravity, 150 times gravity was still a great pressure for Qin Hao. With simple movements of his body, sweat continuously flowed out, and Qin Hao felt as if his bones were creaking. This shouldn't be the limit. Although 150 times gravity is strong, in the original work, Luo Feng, at the planetary level, could withstand over 1,000 times gravity. Even upon entering the elite training camp, the gravity was 9 times right from the start. Qin Hao thought while slowly practicing ancient martial arts Tai Chi. Although there is only one level difference between a god of war and a planetary level, the gap in both strength and physical quality is far beyond imagination. Firstly, a planetary level can fly and has established his own field. Secondly, the awakening of the planetary level physique is also a huge transformation. Furthermore, the speed at which a planetary level devours cosmic energy is far greater than that of a god of war. Qin Hao had been frequently increasing gravity in leaps and bounds these past few days, with a very simple goal: to once again pursue and surpass the limit. Before he became a quasi-warrior, although he frequently entered extreme states and even broke through a limit once, after becoming a warrior, Qin Hao's cultivation never relaxed, and he continuously increased the intensity of his cultivation, yet he never broke through the limit again. The goal of entering the elite training camp was also to use the gravity room to break through the limit once more and achieve another leap in strength. This time, when he made his conditions, choosing to use the gravity room had the same purpose. Precisely because of this, Qin Hao had been continuously challenging his limits these past few days, constantly increasing gravity in leaps and bounds to put greater pressure on himself. However, 100 times gravity was still within the tolerable range for a god of war. Although the pressure was immense these past few days, Qin Hao was also continuously adapting to the gravity, assimilating the power within his body and increasing his strength. Over the next month, Qin Hao continued to cultivate methodically, constantly adapting to the gravity room, accumulating experience, engaging in practical combat, and strengthening his theoretical knowledge. By the end of October, Qin Hao's ranking successfully reached the first position in the elite training camp. Although his explosive power did not break through, his trial tower level did improve, reaching 4.3. For Qin Hao, the biggest change this month was the growth of his theoretical and practical experience. He gained new insights into movement techniques and blade techniques. On the path to perfection, Qin Hao was already able to master them more freely and gradually form his own style. This style was not an artistic conception or a domain, but Qin Hao's further understanding of movement techniques and blade techniques. In his previous cultivation, although Qin Hao improved very quickly, he felt a bit like he was forcing the pace, a bit superficial. However, in this month, his foundation gradually became more solid. In addition, Qin Hao also gradually approached his limit. Under the high pressure of the gravity room, Qin Hao's adaptation to the gravity room gradually reached its maximum, and he gradually approached the limit during the training process. Now, Qin Hao once again entered the state of exhaustion, where his mind and body reached their peak, just like when he was making a push to become a quasi-warrior. After entering this state, Qin Hao's heart became even more excited, and he trained even harder every day. However, although he found the extreme state, and his strength increased gradually, he had not yet found the state of breaking through the limit. In the following months, Qin Hao's training intensity continuously increased, constantly approaching the limit, but he never reached the state of breaking through the limit. After absorbing the spirits of Flora and Dragon blood to break through to mid-level God of War in October, his improvement in the subsequent 2 months, although much higher than others, was relatively limited. It seems unlikely I'll break through to high-level War God before the new year. Qin Hao thought while cultivating in the gravity room. Luo Feng reached high-level War God within a few months of entering the dojo of limits, and now he, with his cheat, couldn't even compare. Chapter 31. Going home for vacation on December 31st, Qin Hao returned to Jiangnan Pavilion after a day of slaughter in the elite training camp. This month, Qin Hao's ranking remained strong, staying in the first position. However, Qin Hao no longer paid much attention to these matters. After simply tidying up his belongings in his room, he prepared to leave the elite training camp. January and February were holidays for the elite training camp. All students would leave and return to their respective forces and homes, awaiting the reopening of the camp. Such regulations were in place partly because the various facilities within the elite training camp needed time for maintenance, and partly to balance work and rest. After all, prolonged high-intensity cultivation and slaughter had a significant impact on both body and mind, requiring the soothing environment of family and friends. Qin Hao still felt a sense of urgency about this. Although the strength of a mid-level God of War was already very strong, for the entire universe, it was merely an unranked apprentice. Next year, Luo Feng would enter the elite training camp, beginning his legend. However, even with a sense of urgency, Qin Hao was still very happy about the holiday. Having been away from home for 4 months, although he often made calls, he was still very homesick. After packing his luggage, Qin Hao, along with Zhao Ruo and Shijiang, went to the Hongning Base City Airport and took a passenger plane back to Jiangnan Base City. Qin Hao, see you after the new year. Come to Jiangnan Base City for a get-together if you have time. Okay, see you after the new year. After the 3 god ancestors greeted each other, they departed for their respective homes. Although they were all from Jiangnan Base City, their residences were still quite far apart. Qin Hao left the airport and then transferred to a special train before returning to YZ City. The feeling of home is still the best. Qin Hao couldn't help but sigh as he stepped out of the station and looked at the bustling crowd around him. The 4 months in the elite training camp were very fulfilling. Every day was occupied with cultivation, and his strength improved well. However, for Qin Hao, who had no long-term experience of leaving home in both his lives, returning home brought him a spiritual fulfillment. Qin Hao, you're back. How's the elite training camp? Are they all very powerful? Qin Hao, you're on holiday. How long is your holiday? Upon entering Minju community, everyone Qin Hao met looked at him curiously, constantly asking about his situation. As the only martial artist from Minju community to enter the dojo of Limit's elite training camp, Qin Hao was undoubtedly the child of others that parents always talked about. As martial artists and family members of the dojo of Limits, they were very clear about the significance of the elite training camp, also known as the God of War training camp, where everyone who emerged became a god of war. And gods of war were undoubtedly strong individuals. There weren't many in an entire base city. Yes, I'm back for 2 months. Qin Hao walked towards his home, answering questions along the way. Uncle Luo, Aunt Luo. Qin Hao said as he reached his doorstep, encountering Luo Hongguo and his wife who were just leaving. Little Hao, I heard you went to the dojo of Limit's elite training camp. Are you on holiday now? Luo Hongguo asked. Yes, 2 months of rest to spend time with my family. Is Luo Feng home? No, he went to the wilderness area again. Luo Hongguo's tone was filled with worry. He had noticed Luo Feng's recent changes and always felt something was amiss. Qin Hao was aware of Luo Feng's current situation. The 100 billion reward incident was making a huge stir online. Even though Qin Hao had put all his energy into cultivation, he had heard about it. Luo Feng should be desperately improving his strength now, and during this period, he had even earned the nickname Madman. However, it was precisely such frantic cultivation that would lead him to enter the elite training camp next year. After a few conversations, Qin Hao opened the door and entered his home. Who is it? As the door opened, a voice came from the living room with a hint of surprise. Mom, I'm back. Qin Hao replied, Zio Hao, you're back. Have you eaten? What do you want to eat? I'll go make it for you now. Old Qin, hurry up. Zio Hao is back. Wang Su shouted as she went to the kitchen and started cooking. About 10 minutes later, a bowl of noodles was ready and placed on the table for Qin Hao. Why didn't you let us know you were coming back so we could prepare? How long will you be home for this holiday? 2 months. I'll go back after the new year. I should graduate directly next year. Qin Hao said, didn't they say it would take 5 years? Father Qin and Mother Qin looked at Qin Hao, asking in confusion. If my strength reaches the required level, I can graduate early. My strength will be almost there next year, Qin Hao said confidently. Theoretically, Qin Hao could already graduate now. With the strength of a mid-level god of war, plus his force exertion, movement techniques, and blade techniques, he could even contend with a senior god of war. This was also because Qin Hao had relaid his foundation over the past few months, not focusing too much on improving aspects like force exertion. However, even without deliberately pursuing it, Qin Hao was not far from the 5th level of the ninefold thunderblade and might even break through during the holiday. The night passed without incident. In the early morning, Qin Hao woke up early and went into the cultivation room to train. Compared to the gravity room in the dojo of Limits, training in his home cultivation room felt very relaxed. However, Qin Hao's every movement was extremely slow. During this period, Qin Hao had become obsessed with Tai Chi, a martial art widely spread in his previous life. However, unlike the health exercise style Tai Chi practiced by elderly people, what Qin Hao practiced was a secret manual treasured by Hong. Qin Hao's movements were sometimes fast, sometimes slow. Although the power was not great, the force was full. In every movement, Qin Hao felt the transmission of power, the alternation of hidden force and obvious force. Jeej, jeej, jeej. While Qin Hao was cultivating, Qin Ying's voice came from outside the cultivation room, calling out repeatedly with urgency in her tone. Hearing Qin Ying's voice, Qin Hao quickly walked out of the cultivation room and immediately hugged Qin Ying. He had come home late yesterday, and Qin Ying was already asleep, so the whole family hadn't woken her up. He hadn't expected Qin Ying to discover his return so early in the morning. Although they hadn't seen each other for 4 months, there was no awkwardness between the two siblings. Qin Hao carried Qin Ying to the dining room, where breakfast was already prepared. The family sat together, eating breakfast and planning their upcoming holiday. After Qin Hao joined the martial arts academy, his parents originally wanted to continue working. However, at Qin Hao's insistence, they finally chose to stay home and take good care of Qin Ying. After entering the dojo of limits and obtaining 10 billion in funds, Qin Hao directly transferred 100 million to each of his parents, which completely put their minds at ease. After discussing the itinerary for the next few days, Qin Hao's family played in YZ City for a few days, then went directly to Jiangnan Base City, where they played for a few days. After visiting several other districts in Jiangnan Base City, they finally returned home. Although it was only a few days of playing, and even cultivation was paused, Qin Hao felt an unprecedented tranquility in his heart. For the first 18 years, there was the excitement after transmigration, then the helplessness after hard work, the urgency after getting his golden finger, and then the continuous frantic training. His heart seemed to have never truly calmed down. His research and training on his temperament had always been more theoretical, and it was only after experiencing things that the theory transformed into a true state of mind. Chapter 32 returned to the wilderness area after half a month. Qin Hao returned home after spending time traveling with his family, with only half a month left until the new year. Qin Hao was preparing to go into the wilderness area again. Having grown accustomed to hunting outside the elite training camp, the half-month of free time made Qin Hao feel restless. He had originally planned to meet Luo Feng to check on his cultivation progress. However, the two perfectly missed each other. While Qin Hao was out with his family, Luo Feng also returned home for a visit and then headed back to the wilderness area. After briefly tidying his backpack, Qin Hao informed his family and set off for the wilderness area. It was the same special train, the same military camp, but upon entering again, Qin Hao's feelings were different. This time entering the wilderness area, Qin Hao's goal was not just to kill, but more to get closer to nature and deepen his understanding of martial arts. Among Hong's cultivation experiences, many were recorded in various places, wildernesses, mountains, and lakes during the Great Nirvana. For Qin Hao, both his movement technique and blade technique were heading towards the intent realm. However, the intent realm could not be achieved through simple cultivation. Foundation, specialization, microcontrol, perfection, intent realm, and domain are processes from controlling one's body and internal self to resonating with the external world. To comprehend the intent realm, understanding the world is inseparable. One must witness various natural phenomena in this world. From these phenomena, one can gain insight into different intent realms. Upon entering the wilderness area, Qin Hao had no fixed destination. He continuously advanced in one direction, witnessing the scenery and nature in various locations. Sometimes he would stop to watch quietly, other times it was just a fleeting glimpse. Just like that, Qin Hao continuously moved forward in the wilderness area, gradually entering the location where Mount Huangshan was before the Great Nirvana. As a famous mountain in China, Huangshan's scenery attracted countless tourists. However, during the Great Nirvana, Huangshan was gradually occupied by various monsters. Even now, very few martial artists come to the Huangshan area. Most martial artists choose cities as their core for hunting and rarely venture into the mountains. Upon entering Huangshan, Qin Hao's pace involuntarily slowed. In his previous life, he had wanted to visit but never acted on it. Since he was here in this life, he would take a good look at this one strange mountain under heaven. Moreover, it was a strange mountain that had undergone decades of natural recovery. Strange pines, peculiar rocks, a sea of clouds, and some surviving cultural relics. Ancient plank roads, ancient couplets, ancient bridges, ancient pavilions, ancient temples, ancient pagodas, and various cliff carvings. Although most were redamaged, many still remained. Someone has entered the vigilance area. Switch screen. Inside a mountain belly, the screen quickly switched, and the image showed Qin Hao. The language these people spoke was not Chinese, but Little Japan. A China martial artist. Release experiment subject 56 for expulsion. At this time, Qin Hao had already ascended to the summit, looking at the Huangshan Sea of clouds, and an endless sigh arose in his heart. The scenery is beautiful and enchanting. No wonder it attracted so many tourists and inspired countless poems. However, in this world, it's much harder to climb up. The scenery was beautiful, but it was no longer something ordinary people could see. Along the way up the mountain, Qin Hao encountered many monsters. Among them were not a few beast general-level monsters, and many were in groups. Even a human warrior squad would find it difficult to handle. Monsters in the mountains are very different from monsters in cities. Most city monsters are mutated from former livestock and zoo animals. Mountain monsters are primarily wild beasts, inherently possessing a certain attack power, and after mutation, their attack power and aggression are even stronger. As night fell, Qin Hao directly set up a boundary on the mountaintop while he lay on the summit, gazing at the night sky above. Infinite stars, a bright moon, a serene night sky, the occasional roars from the mountain forest, the trees and mountains in the darkness. It all seemed to form a strange painting. Feeling everything around him, Qin Hao felt himself becoming a part of Huangshan, a part of the night. Every subtle change around him became incredibly clear in his perception. Rustle, rustle. The sound was faint, but it was very clear in Qin Hao's ears. A monster is coming, what a spoiler. Qin Hao did not act immediately, but let the monster approach. The monster was incredibly fast and quickly came to Qin Hao's side, pouncing directly at him. The moment he was attacked, Qin Hao's black god suit instantly covered his entire body, and at the same time he vanished from his original spot. Something's wrong. Upon seeing the monster attacking him, Qin Hao noticed something amiss. The monster's strength was good, a power of a mid-level beast general, but its appearance was very strange. It had a raven-like beak and pitch-black wings, a dog's body and head, and hands and feet very similar to a human's, covered in fur, probably from an ape or monkey. When Qin Hao saw the monster, he couldn't help but be startled. He had dealt with monsters more than once or twice, and Qin Hao had some understanding of most monsters. Monsters were mutated animals from before the Great Nirvana. Although their size and appearance had changed, they were generally still recognizable. This current monster was not something that existed in reality. Instead, it was a stitched-together creature. Tengu. A name appeared in Qin Hao's mind. It was a character often seen in Little Japan's anime and games in his previous life, a famous yokai from Little Japan. However, in the world of Swallowed Star, Little Japan disappeared during the Great Nirvana, and such Little Japan-specific yokai were rarely known anymore. How could it appear here? Qin Hao dodged while constantly thinking, is Little Japan up to something again? Qin Hao couldn't help but recall the Little Japan he had encountered before. There must be some connection between the two. In his previous life, Little Japan had been continuously migrating to various places, even establishing closed Little Japan schools, and China was one of them. The closed Little Japan schools, strictly guarded, aroused many suspicions. Let me see what these people are up to. After making his decision, Qin Hao drew his long saber, leaving scars on the monster's body. Although there were many scars, they were not fatal, but they gradually put the monster into a severely injured state. As the battle continued, the monster gradually became timid and began to prepare to escape. After more than a dozen more exchanges, the monster let out a mournful cry, flapped its wings, ascended into the air, and flew towards the inside of the mountain. Chapter 33, Hidden Base Inside Huangshan. Qin Hao's figure constantly traversed through the mountains and forests, carefully concealing himself as he advanced, distantly watching the monster flying rapidly in the sky. As he continued to advance, Qin Hao felt a difference in his surroundings. It became much quieter. This situation was highly abnormal in the wilderness, as even at night, there were still many nocturnal monsters present. However, after advancing several kilometers, the surroundings were surprisingly quiet. The monster flying in the sky in the distance entered a mountain peak and also disappeared. It seems it's here. Qin Hao became even more cautious, constantly observing his surroundings as he advanced, moving forward in the shadows of the trees. Something's up. As Qin Hao reached the foot of the mountain, 5 figures in black appeared not far away. These 5 individuals formed a formation that seemed loose on the surface, but they watched out for each other, capable of observing their surroundings and responding to any danger that might arise at any moment. Seeing people appear, Qin Hao knew his guess was correct. Although the distance was a bit far, the attire of this 5-person team had the characteristics of Little Japan ninjas, recognizable at a glance. Qin Hao followed the 5-person team closely, continuously advancing up the mountain, and soon arrived at a natural cave. The entrance to the cave was not large, only allowing a few people to pass through, and was perfectly integrated into the environment, concealed by the surrounding trees. Without careful observation or prior knowledge of its existence, it would be difficult to discover this cave. After the 5-person team entered the cave, Qin Hao did not follow immediately, but waited a few minutes before re-entering the cave. As he advanced through the cave, the long passage wound its way through. This group of Little Japan is making quite a move, actually having such a base here. Who knows what kind of trouble they're stirring up now? After advancing for more than 10 minutes in the passage, the surrounding environment began to change. The original mountain wall gradually transformed into metallic textured walls, with lights that were neither too bright nor too dim, and he could even hear occasional shouts from a distance. Just as Qin Hao was about to continue forward, an alarm blared throughout the entire base. Alarm, intruder, alarm, alarm, intruder, alarm, alarm, intruder, alarm. An intruder has entered the base. Take action immediately. All personnel gather, release all test subjects. Guard teams prepare to attack. We must eliminate the intruder. The base cannot be exposed. After the alarm sounded, the entire base began to operate rapidly, and the personnel within the base started to evacuate in one direction. Various cages in the laboratories were successively opened, monsters were released, and began to move in one direction. At the same time, various teams from different parts of the base began to gather and move towards Qin Hao's direction. And Qin Hao, at the entrance, also knew he had been discovered after hearing the sound. It seems I'll have to force my way through this time. Qin Hao, who had originally intended to investigate further, seeing this situation, no longer bothered to hide. His long blade was unsheathed, and he accelerated his pace, rapidly advancing into the interior of the base. After advancing less than 100 meters and exiting the passage, the surroundings became wide, and a huge plaza appeared before Qin Hao. In the plaza, a large number of monsters were continuously released from the surrounding passages. Besides the monsters based on the Tengu that Qin Hao had seen, there were also many monsters based on Japanese yokai. After Qin Hao appeared, these monsters attacked him ferociously. Facing a large number of monsters, Qin Hao showed no fear, instead charging directly into them. Entering the beast horde, Qin Hao's movements were extremely swift, each strike directly taking down a monster. His figure moved rapidly through the monster horde, maximizing the speed of his slaughter. Although these monsters were numerous, and their appearances were very strange, their power was only at the beast soldier level, posing no threat to Qin Hao. After more than 10 minutes of slaughter, hundreds of monsters were directly cleared by Qin Hao, and the plaza was transformed into a killing field. After clearing these monsters, Qin Hao continued to advance, following the passage at the other end of the plaza. After entering the passage, the surroundings began to change, and Qin Hao felt as if he had entered a large laboratory. On both sides of the path were laboratories, and within each laboratory were huge cultivation chambers. Through the glass, one could see bizarre-looking monsters in the cultivation chambers. Evidently, the group of monsters Qin Hao had just encountered were products of these laboratories. As he continued to advance, some monsters still appeared in the passage. Qin Hao did not stop at all. After dealing with the monsters, he quickly moved forward. Damn it, this group of Little Japan actually dares to do this. As he gradually entered the depths of the base, the surrounding laboratories began to shift from various monster experiments to numerous human experiments. Inside the laboratories, there were mutilated human bodies and mutated martial artists. From their faces, they were all China martial artists. It seems I need to contact the military. Such a situation cannot be resolved by simply dealing with the base. Qin Hao immediately thought of the military. After all, he was within China's borders, and he himself was a China citizen. Even joining the dojo of limits would not change this fact. If any conflict arose between the two sides, Qin Hao's stance would not change. But how do I contact the military? Qin Hao hesitated. He had been a martial artist for a limited time and had very limited connections. To resolve the current situation, he needed someone of sufficient rank. After thinking for a while, Qin Hao decided to contact Shijiang. Although Shijiang was a student of the elite training camp, he was a military man, directly joining an action team specially established for him by the military immediately after graduation. Within the military, Shijiang had very strong connections. Shijiang, I found a research base of Little Japan in the Huangshan area. After contacting Shijiang, Qin Hao spoke directly, explaining the general situation within the base to him before hanging up the phone. After hanging up, Qin Hao continued to advance. The overall size of the base far exceeded Qin Hao's expectations. After passing through the experimental area, there was a large living area. Although it was inside the mountain, all kinds of facilities were very complete, and there were even many entertainment facilities. It was divided into several layers, each with houses of varying heights, like a small town, capable of accommodating at least 10,000 people. However, now these places seemed very messy. Clearly, there had been people here just now, but they had already evacuated. Chapter 34, Inside the Base, Qin Hao advanced while surveying his surroundings. Although it was just a base within a mountain, it had to be said that these Little Japan were quite good at enjoying themselves. The architecture was basically the same as their architectural style in his previous life, with a focus on facilities and entertainment venues, none of which were missing. It was clear they were building this place as if it were their own home. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Streaks of cold light flew directly towards Qin Hao, including throwing darts, flying knives, and kunai. The cold light shimmered on all sorts of hidden weapons, and some even had faint blue or purple glows, clearly indicating they were poisoned. After Qin Hao dodged these hidden weapons, a series of faint gunshots rang out from a distance, and armor-piercing bullets with immense power whistled through the air. However, trying to endanger Qin Hao with these was clearly underestimating him. After dodging, Qin Hao moved swiftly through the buildings, using them for cover while rapidly advancing towards the source of the attack. Kill, kill, kill. With shouts of battle, Little Japan, wearing black ninja suits and samurai suits under their armor, appeared from all directions and charged towards Qin Hao. Facing the incoming attacks, Qin Hao paid them no mind. His figure flowed, his long blade swung, rapidly harvesting every person who entered his attack range. Qin Hao had no good impression of these Little Japan. He showed no mercy whatsoever. In Qin Hao's eyes, whether in his previous life or this one, only dead Little Japan were good Little Japan. The strength of a peak intermediate god of war, perfect level movement technique, perfect level blade technique, +3. 5 times the explosive force were fully unleashed by Qin Hao, and the surrounding Little Japan were harvested by Qin Hao as quickly as cutting melons and vegetables. Most of these Little Japan were martial artists, and many were even at the warlord level. Normally, even when facing an ordinary god of war, they could cope. In a situation where ants could bite an elephant to death, even a god of war might be left behind. However, unfortunately, they encountered Qin Hao. Qin Hao, in every aspect, was among the top tier of god of war, far from something that could be compensated by numbers alone. Qin Hao's power quickly instilled fear in the surrounding Little Japan who had come to fight, but none of them fled. Instead, their eyes were filled with madness. Prepare for honorable death. With a shout, the madness in the eyes of all the Little Japan intensified. Each pulled out a vial of potion and directly poured it into their mouths. Accompanied by insane shouts, their eyes turned bloodshot, and their bodies began to swell. Seeing the actions of the surrounding Little Japan, Qin Hao recalled the several Little Japan he had eliminated earlier. They had all used the same potion and shown the same madness. However, this is still far from enough. Qin Hao remained very relaxed regarding the frenzied little Japan, and his killing speed showed no signs of slowing down. Even the most troublesome high-level warlords had no power to resist in front of Qin Hao. Although these warriors and warlords had some strength, most of it was enhanced by genetic potions, so their inherent foundation was very ordinary. Even if their strength reached the required level, other aspects were very strained. Under the potion's enhancement, their strength improved, but they also gained more weaknesses. Even if a high-level warlord reached the god of war level with the potion's enhancement, it was only in terms of strength and speed. In Qin Hao's eyes, it was merely a show. They really are willing to spend a lot. During the continuous combat, Qin Hao also realized that these people, like the monsters before, were merely stalling for time. It seems this base has more secrets, and I can't let these little Japan succeed. Qin Hao thought, and his attack speed suddenly accelerated. After quickly clearing out the surrounding little Japan, he exerted force with his feet, leaped upwards, and directly ascended to the rooftop, moving swiftly across it and rapidly advancing towards the lower levels of the base. Watching Qin Hao disappear from the spot, the already frenzied little Japan followed madly behind him, and the surrounding buildings were directly destroyed. However, the speed of a god of war was far beyond what they could keep up with, and Qin Hao quickly vanished from their sight. After losing their target, the eyes of these little Japan were still filled with madness, and they began to attack each other. Qin Hao advanced quickly, soon exiting the residential area and arriving at a large gate. The technologically advanced gate was thick and tightly sealed, made entirely of metal, with even the surrounding mountain integrated into it. However, even though it was a wall of bronze and iron, it did not hinder Qin Hao's progress. His long blade swung out, unleashing the power of the SS-grade equipment, directly splitting open the gate. Upon entering the gate, a massive factory building greeted Qin Hao's eyes. Looking up, the scale of the entire factory was almost boundless, appearing much larger than the mountain outside. Although he didn't recognize the equipment in the factory, judging from its precision and complexity, it was definitely not simple. Furthermore, even now, some production lines were still continuously operating. Scanning the layout of the entire factory, Qin Hao gained a certain understanding of its situation. The factory was divided into 4 parts, producing thermal weapons, genetic potions, combat suits, and experimental equipment, respectively. Besides these, he could even see production lines for daily necessities, though they occupied a very small portion. Judging solely from this equipment, these little Japan had been in this base for a considerable amount of time. The complete production equipment and various materials were not much weaker than those in a base city like Yangzhou. It seems this base is far more important than imagined. Qin Hao strode forward, passing the factory area and advancing deeper into the base. As Qin Hao advanced, the little Japan in the base were completely shocked by him. Who exactly is this kid? How can he be so strong? The entire guard squad was deployed, yet they couldn't stop him. Sir, he has already breached the upper defense and entered the core area. Immediately inform Lord Liu Chuan, activate the emergency plan. The base is crucial for rebuilding the empire. There can be no mistakes. Orders were continuously transmitted, and all defensive equipment within the core base was activated. However, Qin Hao was unaware of these things, and even if he knew, he would not retreat. Passing through the factory production area, Qin Hao entered a new level. The environment of this level changed again. It was a pure white space, with rooms lining both sides of the corridor. Looking through the glass, they were very similar to the laboratories on the upper level. However, these laboratories on this level were filled with various bottles and jars, and various reagents were placed on the experimental tables. Chapter 35. The God of War attacks. Click, click, click. As the sound rang out, the surrounding lights quickly extinguished, plunging the area into darkness. Qin Hao's advancing speed began to slow, and he vigilantly surveyed his surroundings. A strange place, an unfamiliar environment, coupled with enemies that could appear at any moment. made Qin Hao extremely cautious, even with his great confidence in his own strength. His black god suit quickly enveloped his entire body, leaving only his eyes and nostrils exposed, maximizing his defense. As the lights dimmed, Qin Hao advanced, carefully sensing everything around him. After moving 100 meters, a rustling sound began to emerge from the surroundings. Along with the sound, Qin Hao sensed 5 figures appearing not far away. It seems like it's time for the main course. Although only 5 people appeared, Qin Hao could clearly feel that these 5 were not simple. The weakest among the 5 had already reached the advanced warlord level, and 2 had even become God of War. God of War are high-end combatants in any force, and among the billions of people worldwide, God of War are a minority within a minority. Facing such a combination, Qin Hao also perked up, watching the 5 approaching figures with full vigilance. After appearing, the 5 constantly shifted their positions, advancing rapidly. Although their speed was fast, they made almost no sound. It was only because Qin Hao's 5 senses were far more sensitive than ordinary people's that he was able to detect their presence. Furthermore, as the 5 advanced, their formation continuously changed but always remained a cohesive unit. Even if one side was attacked, the other 4 could quickly provide support. A little interesting, but still lacking. When the 5 reached a position about 10 meters from Qin Hao's figure rapidly vanished from his original spot, reappearing behind the 5. After standing firm, he quickly turned and attacked the person closest to him. This person had been at the very back of the team, and the others had always revolved around him, clearly indicating that this person was more important, perhaps even a trump card. Not good. Qin Hao's actions caught the 5-person team off guard. The moment Qin Hao disappeared, they quickly converged. However, their speed was clearly not as fast as Qin Hao's, and as soon as they began to move, Qin Hao's attack arrived. Bang, bang, bang. After 3 consecutive collision sounds, Qin Hao's figure quickly retreated. It's a Psyker Master. Just as Qin Hao was about to attack, 3 strikes collided with Qin Hao's blade, barely neutralizing his offensive. The force of each attack was not strong, but they all possessed the power of an elementary god of war. Qin Hao had some understanding of Psyker Master. Luo Feng in the original work was a Psyker Master. In the elite training camp, there were also many Psyker Master. The bizarre and ubiquitous attacks of Psyker Master are definitely like cheating among martial artists. Even Qin Hao needed to respond carefully. However, it was only a matter of being a little more careful. After all, the Black God suit's defense ensured that Qin Hao was invincible. Interesting. Qin Hao said, then his figure vanished again, reappearing in front of the 5-person team, his attacks becoming even faster. It must be said that the 5-person team's coordination was incredibly tacit. Even when facing Qin Hao's attacks, they could respond and gradually became more skilled. They constantly switched between offense and defense. Although they couldn't injure Qin Hao, they could achieve a certain degree of self-preservation. The ability to achieve such a degree was not due to Qin Hao's weakness, but rather the influence of the environment. Even though Qin Hao's 5 senses were sharp, fighting in the dark was still somewhat unaccustomed, especially in terms of movement techniques, which were greatly hindered. In contrast, each member of the Little Japan's 5-person team wore night vision equipment, so the darkness had no impact on them whatsoever. However, as the battle progressed, Qin Hao gradually began to adapt to the rhythm of combat, and the impact of the darkness became smaller and smaller. His movement techniques changed. Every attack around him was completely within Qin Hao's grasp, and his unexpected dodging methods and skilled movement techniques forced the 5-person team to adjust their formation. Damn it, we can't drag this out any longer. This kid is too strong, we must deal with him quickly. The Psyker Master from the Little Japan's 5-person team jabbered, while simultaneously, a flurry of kunai flew out, mixed with various debris from the damaged surroundings, forming a vortex that directly attacked Qin Hao. It must be said that every Psyker Master is uniquely gifted and can fight above their level. The tornado formed by the debris, driven by the 4 kunai at its core, directly sealed off the space around Qin Hao, leaving him nowhere to hide. The other four also attacked Qin Hao simultaneously, giving him no room to dodge or breathe. Facing the impending attack, Qin Hao focused all his attention, wielding his long blade, forming streaks of blade light that transformed into a barrier, enveloping his surroundings. The moment he was attacked, this barrier seemed to transform into a wall of blades, shattering everything around him. At the same time, the four Little Japan who had attacked him were also directly repelled. 3 of the advanced warlord immediately fell to the ground, covered in wounds. The god of war level 1 fared slightly better, but his combat suit was almost completely shattered. Just as Qin Hao blocked the attack and was preparing to attack again, a sense of crisis arose in Qin Hao's heart, and all the hairs on his body stood on end. Behind the tornado, a cold glint rapidly attacked Qin Hao's eyes. Looking at the incoming cold glint, Qin Hao was already too late to dodge. Faster, faster, even faster. Qin Hao did not panic. The long blade in his hand instinctively slashed out, its speed like thunderclap, extremely swift. Thunderclap! The long blade sliced through, forming an afterimage, and the cold glint flying towards Qin Hao was directly cut in half, falling to the ground, revealed to be an extremely fine long needle. This move was precisely Qin Hao's continuously refined technique, Thunderclap, the 4th stage of the 9-fold Thunderblade's power, sacrificing everything for speed, a move that pushed speed to its absolute limit. The bizarre nature of the Psyker Master combined with such a minute weapon as a long needle could be said to have brought stealth to its extreme. The destructive power brought by extreme speed, even if one was a level higher, would be very difficult to deal with. Moreover, such a move was even hidden behind a major attack, making it unexpected. Subscribe for more amazing novel audiobooks. Don't forget to like, comment, and share Infinite Novel Audio. I almost capsized in a ditch. Qin Hao let out a light breath, no longer holding back in the slightest. His figure flashed and appeared behind the Psyker Master, raising his long blade and slashing out. Bang! With a huge collision sound, Qin Hao was directly repelled dozens of steps, and the hand holding the blade trembled uncontrollably. Who are you? Chapter 36. The 5th level of the 9-layer Thunder Blade. After Qin Hao was repelled, he stabilized himself, pushed off the ground, and quickly retreated. His previous attack held nothing back, with the strength of a peak intermediate god of war and a 3.5x power amplification. His power had already surpassed that of a high-level war god. However, in the clash, Qin Hao gained no advantage whatsoever. Instead, he was at a disadvantage. A high-level war god, Qin Hao quickly assessed, becoming even more cautious. He continuously retreated, preparing to leave the laboratory environment. Facing a god of war, Qin Hao felt a certain pressure. In an equal environment, Qin Hao was confident he could handle it. However, the current environment was clearly unfavorable to him. Fighting a god of war when his strength couldn't be fully utilized was obviously unwise. Moving quickly, Qin Hao soon arrived at the next level, following the route in his memory. This level was distinctly different from the one above. It was an energy supply area, with a massive energy device in the center continuously releasing energy. Just as Qin Hao stopped, a figure rapidly appeared from behind, attacking Qin Hao with a katana. Clang, clang, clang. Continuous collision sounds rang out as Qin Hao and the other person engaged in battle. Even though Qin Hao used his full strength under the high-level war god's attacks, he still gained no advantage whatsoever. Instead, he fell into a disadvantage, being hit several times. However, with an SS-grade combat suit on the outside and a black god suit on the inside, the high-level war god's attacks, though strong, caused no damage to Qin Hao. There were knife marks left on the combat suit, but not even a trace was left on the black god suit. Black god suit. Yanagawa Masami saw Qin Hao, who was completely unharmed by his attacks, and instantly understood the origin of the black combat suit. As a divine suit on Earth, the black god suit was extremely limited in number. Every wearer was a true core member of various forces, and many who surpassed the god of war level didn't even possess one. Now, it had actually appeared on a young man. Yanagawa Mesami had some conjectures about Qin Hao's identity, and a hint of apprehension flashed in his eyes. However, the apprehension quickly turned into resolve, and his eyes filled with killing intent. Arcane art, drifting snow. As Yanagawa Masami murmured, the long blade in his hand became enveloped in a fine mist, and the surrounding air suddenly grew cold. With a single slash, Qin Hao felt a biting chill sweep over him, and the moment their blades collided, a wave of cold air surged along the long blade, as if it would freeze him in the next instant. How is this possible? Feeling the invading cold, Qin Hao was extremely surprised. Elemental attacks shouldn't appear on a god of war. Even comprehending an intent couldn't harness the power of heaven and earth. Yet, the little Japan in front of him had actually mastered this power, Qin Hao thought while retreating. No, his power hasn't increased. He's still a high-level war god, Qin Hao frowned. How did he do it? Qin Hao's mind was full of questions, but Yanagawa Mesami gave him no time to ponder. His attacks followed quickly. Utilizing his perfect-level movement technique with full force, Qin Hao's figure continuously dodged the attacks, while his eyes remained fixed on Yanagawa Masami, trying to find a weakness. The blade is the problem. After dodging more than 20 moves, Qin Hao quickly discovered the crux of the issue. It was the blade in Yanagawa Masami's hand. However, just as Qin Hao was about to counterattack, streaks of cold light rapidly shot out from a nearby passage, heading towards Qin Hao. The angles of the cold lights were extremely tricky, aiming for Qin Hao's exposed eyes and nose, forcing Qin Hao to dodge. At the same time, Yanagawa Masami, who had been pursuing Qin Hao, launched a slash that directly struck Qin Hao. The blade directly cut across Qin Hao's chest. With the protection of the combat suit and Black God suit, Qin Hao was not harmed by the slash. However, frost condensed on the combat suit and Black God suit, and the biting cold penetrated the defenses, making Qin Hao shiver all over. A continuous stream of cold air tried to invade his body from his chest, and his heart couldn't help but tremble. Not good, Qin Hao exclaimed inwardly, quickly retreating. However, neither Yanagawa Masami nor the hidden Little Japan Psyker Master gave Qin Hao any time to react. After one successful hit, their attacks came one after another. Although Qin Hao dodged quickly, several slashes still landed on him. The continuous invasion of cold made Qin Hao feel his movements slowing down, and the flow of blood and the functions of his body were affected. Although martial artists absorb cosmic energy and continuously evolve, before breaking through to the planetary level, they are still flesh and blood, and facing extreme low temperatures will still affect and harm them. I can't let this continue. I need to deal with the Psyker Master first. Qin Hao made a decision, his figure quickly disappearing from his original spot, moving away from Yanagawa Masami's attack range and rapidly fleeing in one direction. It's too late to escape now. Yanagawa Masami chased after Qin Hao from behind, his malicious voice filled with the cruel amusement of a cat playing with a mouse. As a high-level war god, to suffer a disadvantage at the hands of a mere youth, and even require assistance from others to gain the upper hand, he felt incredibly frustrated. Qin Hao ignored Yanagawa Masami behind him, continuously increasing his running speed. However, even with the amplification of the ninefold Thunderblade's power, Qin Hao's speed couldn't completely shake off Yanagawa Masami. Instead, he was constantly being closed in on. Qin Hao could only rely on constantly changing his direction to create opportunities for himself to strike. Faster, even faster, under the pursuit and attacks of Yanagawa Masami and the Little Japan Psyker Master, Qin Hao felt himself becoming excited. Every cell in his body was becoming active, and his mind was clearer than ever before. He continuously dodged the incoming flying needles, while also flicking his long blade to change the direction of the needles, creating a slight obstruction for Yanagawa Masami behind him. At the same time, his footwork constantly changed direction, and his speed, strength, and power amplification continuously reached their limits. All along, although Qin Hao had applied the power amplification of the fourth stage of the ninefold Thunderblade to various parts of his body, His cultivation had primarily been through blade techniques. Now, during the process of running, Qin Hao felt his comprehension of the ninefold thunderblade's power amplification becoming clearer. Although the ninefold thunderblade is demonstrated through blade techniques, its core is still power amplification. If power amplification can be applied to the entire body, then similarly, one can also cultivate the ninefold thunderblade's power amplification. Qin Hao advanced rapidly, his speed gradually reaching its extreme. The insights into the fifth stage of the ninefold thunderblade gradually surged into his mind. After completing the cultivation of the fourth stage of the ninefold thunderblade, although most of Qin Hao's attention had been on accumulation, the cultivation of the fifth stage of the ninefold thunderblade had not been completely abandoned. He was already close to a breakthrough, and now, under pressure and full force exertion, the power amplification technique of the fifth stage of the ninefold thunderblade was finally fully comprehended by Qin Hao. The fifth stage of the ninefold thunderblade is complete. Chapter 37, Crazy Counterattack. The breakthrough to the fifth level of ninefold thunderblade caused Qin Hao's speed to increase sharply, and his figure quickly disappeared from his original spot. The sudden increase in speed caught both Yanagawa Masami and the Little Japan's Psyker Master off guard. The moment Qin Hao disappeared, both of them were startled and quickly searched for Qin Hao's location. However, Qin Hao didn't give them any reaction time. With a 4.2 times force burst, he pushed his speed to the extreme, covering hundreds of meters in an instant. His figure reappeared in front of the Little Japan's Psyker Master. Before he could react, Qin Hao directly beheaded him with a single strike. The Little Japan's eyes were still filled with disbelief as he watched his body rapidly move away, disbelief replaced by an expression of longing. How is this possible? How is this possible? I am a lofty god of war, a 1 in a million Psyker Master. How could I die here? With endless unwillingness, the Little Japan's head hit the ground and rolled into the distance, completely losing all signs of life. The sudden turn of events plunged Yanagawa Masami into shock and fury. He launched a reckless attack at Qin Hao, his body enveloped in ice crystals and dense fog. Following his long blade, a wave of chilling air directly assaulted Qin Hao. Although Qin Hao was wary of Yanagawa Masami's attack, without the Psyker Master's hindrance, the threat he posed was significantly reduced. Qin Hao quickly dodged the attack and counterattacked, aiming for Yanagawa Masami's wrist. As long as there was no threat from the chilling air, even if Yanagawa Masami was a high-level war god, his threat in Qin Hao's eyes was very limited. With the boost from the fifth level of ninefold thunderblade, a 4x force amplification, and Qin Hao's strength as a mid-level god of war, his power was in no way inferior to a high-level war god. Furthermore, although Yanagawa Masami was a high-level war god, his mastery of movement techniques and blade techniques was inferior to Qin Hao's, and now he couldn't even match Qin Hao's force output. His only real advantage was his strength, which posed a very limited threat to Qin Hao. Their battle gradually became a stalemate, with Qin Hao becoming more relaxed while Yanagawa Masami grew anxious. Qin Hao wasn't concerned about the duration of the fight. He had already contacted Shijiang, and he believed the military was already gathering here. The longer the delay, the more advantageous it would be for him. Compared to Qin Hao, Yanagawa Masami was not so relaxed. The importance of the base was directly related to their mission of national restoration, and now that someone had broken in, it had been exposed. If they didn't quickly resolve the trouble, their dream of restoration would be completely shattered. Damn it, kid, you forced my hand. Yanagawa Masami glared fiercely at Qin Hao, as if he had made up his mind. Initiate the final protocol. Yanagawa Masami shouted, a fierce glint flashing in his eyes, but it quickly subsided. Kid, you'll stay here and be buried with the entire base. To be able to take down a genius like you, this base has served its purpose. Yanagawa Masami said, his figure retreating towards the passage, preparing to leave. Hearing Yanagawa Masami's words and seeing his actions, Qin Hao knew he was preparing to escape. He quickly pursued Yanagawa Masami, descending the stairs continuously. He traveled for a full 100 meters without encountering any intermediate floors. The stairs seemed to lead directly into the depths of the earth. After descending another 100 meters down the stairs, a light finally appeared ahead, and a door emerged not far away. Entering the door, Qin Hao's eyes were met with a space 200 meters high and the size of dozens of football fields. The entire space, including the ground and walls, was covered in various bloodstains, and the air was filled with a nauseating stench. "I didn't expect you to actually follow me. Well then, you can have a good time with it. Be careful not to lose your life." Yanagawa Masami's voice came from a giant door in the distance, filled with mockery. As his voice fell, he pressed a switch, and the giant door opened, revealing a monster slowly emerging from the darkness. When the monster's figure fully emerged, it was a beast nearly 100 meters tall, with a bull's head and a human body. After the monster came out, it let out a roar, and a foul stench permeated the air. "Ushini, go kill him." With Yanagawa Masami's command, the Ushini attacked Qin Hao. Facing the monster attacking him, Qin Hao dared not show the slightest slack. Just from its size, this monster's strength was definitely not weak, and it was being used as a trump card by Little Japan, so its power was unimaginable. The 100-meter distance was instantly covered by the Ushini's massive body, and it launched a punch directly at Qin Hao. Qin Hao dared not be careless, quickly retreating and dodging the attack, then counterattacking the Ushini. His long blade slashed into the Ushini's body, and a pillar of blood spurted out. However, the damage inflicted on the Ushini was very limited. It only cut through the skin and into the muscle, not even reaching the bone. "He's really tough-skinned and thick-fleshed." Qin Hao saw that his attack had failed and quickly retreated. However, before Qin Hao could move away, the Ushini's attack struck again, directly hitting Qin Hao's body. The immense force sent Qin Hao flying, landing 100 meters away. His planetary-level strength. Feeling the pain in his body, Qin Hao stood up, and the look in his eyes changed as he gazed at the Ushini. Qin Hao was wearing the Black God suit, which could negate 90% of force. Even a high-level war god's attack would have difficulty injuring him. Now, the Ushini's single blow had injured him, and the impact he felt was even stronger than that of a mid-level god of war. It was only because Qin Hao's physical quality far surpassed others that he was able to withstand this attack. However, this Ushini was not without weaknesses. Its strength reached the planetary level, but its speed did not, and compared to other planetary-level monsters, the Ushini did not possess much intelligence, only able to follow simple attack commands. Before Qin Hao could think further, the Ushini attacked again, its immense power stirring the surrounding air. Before its fist even reached him, the wind from its punch blasted him. Qin Hao chose not to confront it head-on, instead utilizing his superior agility to quickly maneuver across the ground, dodging the Ushini's attacks while continuously closing in on it. In this situation, only by attacking its weak points could he hope to win. The Ushini's nearly 100-meter-tall body meant that any part of its body, if attacked, would only result in another wound, like a person accidentally scratching themselves. Currently, the only places that could cause a fatal blow were its eyes, throat, ears, anus, and head. To achieve a one-hit kill, only the vital points on its head would suffice. As Qin Hao's body continuously closed in, the Ushini's attacks became even more fierce. A single careless blow from its fist could result in a severe injury for Qin Hao. The previous attack was already the limit for Qin Hao in his current state. After all, Qin Hao's physical quality was currently only at the mid-level god of war. Chapter 38 limits. Chapter 38. The limit. Qin Hao's figure moved rapidly, constantly closing in on the Ox School. However, the difficulty of advancing far exceeded his imagination. The closer he got to the Ox School, the harder it became to take another step. Moreover, as he advanced, Qin Hao also had to be careful not to be attacked again. The mental and physical pressure, a double burden, greatly affected him. No matter how much of a genius Qin Hao was, he was still just a teenager under 19. Even in his previous life, he was only in his 20s, and his life experience was far from rich. When faced with difficult situations, even if his heart wanted to persevere, his body would still hesitate. Especially this injury had an impact on Qin Hao. The previous frostbite, coupled with the impact of the ox ghoul's punch, was something Qin Hao had never experienced. Even with continuous extreme training, it was more about challenging himself, and there was a certain guarantee. He knew he had the meteor tears as a safety net. There was danger, but he would not lose his life. The situation he faced now was different. Another attack from the ox ghoul might push him to his limit, or even severely injure him. In this environment, severe injury would lead to death. The ox ghoul would not give him any chance to recover. Even the meteor tears would find it difficult to complete recovery in an instant. With these concerns in his heart, Qin Hao's advancing speed also slowed, and he became more cautious in his responses. When the mind is troubled, even strength cannot be fully unleashed. This won't do. Qin Hao gradually realized his problem, a problem he had always had. However, some problems, even if known, cannot be solved immediately. They only change after sufficient experience. I've already died once. What else is there to worry about? What else is there to be afraid of? Even if I truly face a planetary-level opponent, I must have the courage to draw my blade. Otherwise, how can I venture into the vast starry sky? How can I forge ahead in my future growth? Qin Hao thought, and his entire being seemed to undergo a transformation at this moment. Seeing my true nature, now I can say I've truly begun cultivating my mind. Now, let me go wild. With that thought, Qin Hao began to act, his speed becoming even faster. The fifth level of the ninefold thunderblade's power was fully unleashed. His speed surged, and Qin Hao no longer just dodged, but began to continuously attack the ox ghoul. Although each strike inflicted limited damage on the ox ghoul, the rapid attacks caused the wounds on the ox ghoul's body to continuously increase, and blood flowed out, forming a small puddle on the ground. It's not over yet. After dodging a punch from the ox ghoul, Qin Hao directly jumped onto the ox ghoul's arm, plunged his long blade into the arm, and ran quickly, instantly carving a 10-meter-long wound on the ox ghoul's arm. Ah, oh, a painful wail sounded. The ox ghoul's pained and angry voice vibrated the surrounding air, and its other hand quickly attacked Qin Hao, like swatting a fly, swift and powerful. Facing the incoming punch, Qin Hao chose not to dodge. He wielded extreme shadow and simultaneously slashed, and at the moment of impact, one of the ox ghoul's fingers was cut off by Qin Hao. At the same time, Qin Hao's figure also rapidly fell, and after changing his posture in the air, he landed steadily on the ground, PFFT. In the collision, Qin Hao also sustained injuries, spitting out a mouthful of fresh blood. However, Qin Hao didn't care in the slightest. The moment he landed, he vanished from his original position. He reappeared behind the ox ghoul, his long blade directly slashing towards the ox ghoul's Achilles tendon. Cutting through the skin, he severed the Achilles tendon by half, exposing the white tendon. Damn it, how is this possible? How can this brat be a match for the ox ghoul? Yanagawa Masami, in the observation room, saw Qin Hao and the ox ghoul battling below, his eyes filled with disbelief. This brat must not be allowed to live. Let the ox ghoul wear him down. Yanagawa Masami chuckled sinisterly. Sir, bad news. China's military personnel have entered the alert zone. The number discovered has already exceeded 10,000. Just as Yanagawa Masami was awaiting the outcome of the battle between Qin Hao and the ox ghoul, a voice sounded in his ear. Bastards, evacuate immediately. Don't worry about anyone else. Abandon the base, leave quickly, activate the base's self-destruct mode. After Yanagawa Masami finished speaking, he quickly left the observation room. Qin Hao, who was fully engrossed in the battle, did not notice Yanagawa Masami's departure, but instead focused all his energy on the ox ghoul. As the battle progressed, Qin Hao gradually found his own rhythm. Although the battle was intense, it made Qin Hao feel more excited. At this moment, Qin Hao was completely immersed in the fight, and his entire being was completely excited. Every man has a surge of passion within him, a passion for battle. Qin Hao had killed and fought many times, but he had never truly felt this excited. Now he was completely excited. The excited Qin Hao seemed to be completely unleashed. He completely forgot the pain in his body, his adrenaline surged, and his battle with the ox school became even more bizarre. The blade in his hand constantly changed, sometimes heavy, sometimes nimble. One could even see the shadows of swordplay, spearplay, and other weapons in his blade techniques. The secret manuals he had read for months in Hong's study were constantly unleashed in Qin Hao's mind at this moment, every move and stance integrating into his attacks. Under the fierce battle, the wounds on the ox school's body continuously increased. Its Achilles tendons were completely severed by Qin Hao, its mobility declined, its body was covered in wounds, and there was even a wound on its throat. However, while the ox school was constantly getting injured, Qin Hao's condition was also not good. Although he continuously dissipated force during collisions with the ox school, the powerful impact gradually pushed Qin Hao's body to its limit. Even Qin Hao's internal organs showed many cracks. However, Qin Hao, completely immersed in the battle now, seemed to no longer feel the changes in his body but was fully focused on the fight. Startling thunder, illusory dream, rainbow piercing the sun, with each strike, Qin Hao's position changed. The final strike, the long blade, as if transformed into a long rainbow, erupted with extreme power, once again slashing across the wound on the ox school's throat, and following the wound, it cut open the ox school's throat. Hoo. The ox school instinctively clutched its throat, trying to breathe. Although it had suffered a fatal injury, the ox school did not immediately lose its life. A monster with planetary-level strength possessed far greater vitality than imagined. Feeling its life slipping away, the ox school went completely berserk at this moment, rapidly swinging its fists to attack Qin Hao. At this time, Qin Hao and the ox school were in very similar situations. The ox school was about to lose its life, and Qin Hao had also reached his limit. That last strike had almost completely exhausted all his strength. However, facing the ox school's attack, Qin Hao did not sit idly by. The long blade in his hand continuously blocked the attacks. Under repeated impacts, his injuries became even more severe. With a roar, Qin Hao, even at the limit of his physical condition, suddenly exerted force and charged towards the ox school again. Disregarding all of the ox school's attacks, he leaped up again, and his blade once more slashed across the ox school's throat. The ox school fell to the ground, and Qin Hao also landed. Immediately, a wave of exhaustion swept over his body. He even felt his life force draining away. This time, I've really overdone it. Physical and mental exhaustion struck simultaneously. However, just as Qin Hao felt his life force draining away, a warm current rapidly erupted from his heart, quickly sweeping through his entire body. Chapter 39. New Year's Day and graduation. Qin Hao lay on the ground, surrounded by blood. The exhaustion of his body and mind rapidly receded under the energy dissipated by the meteor tears, followed by a sensation of soreness and itching. And then pain. His body's injuries quickly recovered. Internal organ fissures were rapidly repaired, and broken bones and muscles grew swiftly. In an extremely short time, Qin Hao's severely injured body had recovered to its original state and was even much stronger. However, this time, the power of the meteor tears did not disappear. Instead, it continued to release, constantly integrating into every part of Qin Hao's body, penetrating deep into every cell, and the DNA within the cells also began to undergo transformation. His genes were continuously repaired, his body constantly strengthened, and blood impurities were continuously expelled from his pores. Thump, thump, thump. Qin Hao clearly felt his heart beating rapidly, fresh blood continuously flowing through his heart to all parts of his body. Along with the blood, surges of energy continuously roamed and flowed throughout Qin Hao's body, as if a spring breeze had swept across the earth, bringing everything back to life. The process of transformation was both long and swift. Qin Hao stood up again, feeling his body's strength surge once more. He looked at his surroundings. The ox-headed demon was completely lifeless, and Yanagawa Masami had long since vanished. Urgent footsteps came from outside the door behind him. A team of martial artists quickly appeared outside the door and entered the square. Qin Hao, A startled cry and a figure quickly appeared before Qin Hao. "Are you all right?" The newcomer was Shi Jiang. After receiving Qin Hao's call, he quickly reported it to the military and went to the military zone in the wilderness area, leading the martial artists from the military zone to come. Entering the base, he saw traces of combat everywhere, dead strange monsters and Little Japan martial artists, filling his heart with shock. Thousands of monsters and martial artists, even he, who already possessed the strength of a god of war, could not guarantee that he would not suffer any harm. "It's fine, it's been resolved. However, the leader has disappeared and there should be a secret passage of theirs below." Qin Hao said, "Let's clear out the entire base first. These Little Japan don't know what else they've hidden in this base. We can't be careless." "Okay." Shi Jiang agreed, then waved his hand backward. The martial artist team followed him. "The higher-ups have fully taken over. Get people down here quickly to clear the scene. Be careful of the base's defensive measures. Have technical personnel cut off some signals to prevent these Little Japan from jumping the gun. All signals have been cut off, the self-destruct program has been stopped, and surveillance has detected signs of a large number of personnel activities underground." After receiving the answer, Shi Jiang looked at Qin Hao, his eyes full of inquiry. After all, Qin Hao had discovered the base, and his strength was also the strongest among these people. "Let's go, clean it up, control the people below, and I should go home." Qin Hao did not hesitate and quickly headed for the lower levels of the base. As for Yanagawa Masami, Qin Hao already had some guesses in his heart. With the military's arrival, Yanagawa Masami should have already left. It would be very difficult to find a high-level war god who had escaped. As expected, during the subsequent cleanup, tens of thousands of Little Japan personnel were found, but Yanagawa Masami was not among them. After dawn, Qin Hao walked out of the base, followed by military personnel escorting the Little Japan personnel and various machinery. Vehicles could not be driven in the wilderness area, so everything could only be transported by human power. However, the several thousand soldiers who came this time all had the strength of martial artists, making it very easy to transport things. During the journey to the military base, although they encountered many monsters, they were all easily dealt with, and they returned to the military base smoothly along the way. After returning to the military base, Qin Hao did not stay long. He said goodbye to Shi Jiang directly and left on a special train. In the following period, Qin Hao's life returned to its normal routine, accompanying his parents at home, taking his sister out to play everywhere, and daily routine cultivation. At the same time, he also met Luo Feng and gave him some guidance on cultivation. It must be said that Luo Feng is indeed the protagonist. In just a few months, his strength had stabilized at elementary war god, and his explosive power had reached the 3rd stage, not far from the 4th. His movement technique had reached the subtle level, and his blade technique had also reached the specialized level. Of course, he couldn't compare to Qin Hao, who was a cheat. After fighting the ox-headed demon, the power of the meteor tears was once again activated, leading to a leapfrog increase in strength. He had already reached high-level war god, with a strength of 350,000 kilograms, which was considered upper middle among high-level war gods. In addition to the increase in strength, the greater change was Qin Hao's feeling of his physical constitution's transformation. The cultivation of the 1st stage of the Crimson Bright Nine Heavens diagram had improved. According to the current progress, it would be possible to complete the 1st stage upon entering the planetary level. A 3x genetic level was also excellent within the human race. Although his other blade techniques and movement techniques hadn't changed much, the change in his state of mind brought about a more composed performance in his blade techniques and movement techniques. His perfect level movement technique was also approaching completion. As long as he gained some insight into the artistic conception, he would be able to break through quickly. After spending the new year at home, the end of the holiday was drawing nearer. Since he had already become a high-level war god, Qin Hao's plans for his future began to change. With the strength of a high-level war god, coupled with the black god suit, and 4.2 times his explosive power, Qin Hao now had complete self-preservation capability. Even those beyond a god of war would find it difficult to kill him. Then, after school starts, I'll prepare to graduate. As the holiday approached its end, Qin Hao made his decision. The resources that the elite training camp could provide were now very difficult to help him improve his strength. As for the books in Hong's study, those he could read and found useful had all been read once in the past few months. Now, what Qin Hao lacked was comprehension, experience, and practical experience. Just like the battle in the Little Japan base, crushing opponents was no problem, and fighting equally strong opponents also had no impact. However, when facing stronger opponents and more dangerous environments, his mental fortitude still lacked a lot of training. After all, some things and principles are understood, but it's very difficult to achieve them in reality. Read 10,000 books, travel 10,000 miles. Qin Hao's next goal was already very clear. He would enter the wilderness area, comprehend nature, comprehend life, and learn from heaven and earth. Whether it was for the demand for mental training or for the future comprehension of artistic conception and domain, it could not be achieved by simply studying in isolation. Although he had read Hong's cultivation experience, his experience in breaking through to the planetary level, and his method of comprehending domains, those were just his. It would be very difficult for him to achieve it by simply relying on experience. If it were that simple, Thunder God would not have been trapped outside the door of the domain all this time. If Qin Hao wanted to break through to the planetary level and comprehend a domain in the future, then accumulation in this area was absolutely indispensable. Chapter 40 Graduation Chapter 40 Graduation on February 28th at the Jiangnan Base City Airport. Qin Hao, Shijiang, and Zhao Ruo gathered. Beside them were Yang Hui and Luo Feng. The three were returning to the elite training camp after their holiday. Luo Feng, on the other hand, was selected for the entrance assessment to join the elite training camp. This was a month earlier than his entry in the original novel. However, Luo Feng's strength was also considerably greater than in the original novel, and he had obtained this assessment opportunity through Qin Hao's recommendation. Luo Feng, this time you will undergo a B-level assessment. If you pass, you can enter the elite training camp. Qin Hao, Shijiang, and Zhao Ruo are the current students from Jiangnan Base City in the elite training camp. You should communicate more often, Yang Hui said to Luo Feng. Yes, Luo Feng replied, a hint of nervousness in his tone. He knew about the elite training camp. Especially last year, when Qin Hao entered the elite training camp, it was common knowledge in Minju community, and everyone knew that almost every person who entered this training camp would become a god of war. However, his current strength was considerably weaker than Qin Hao's when he first entered the elite training camp, so he still felt a bit uneasy. Luo Feng, don't worry, the assessment is very simple, Qin Hao said at this moment. Hearing Qin Hao's words, the others couldn't help but roll their eyes. Simple. As the world's #1 training camp, the assessment was never simple. Ordinary geniuses couldn't even get in. The five boarded the passenger plane and landed in Hongning Base City after more than an hour. They then took a special car to the elite training camp. Upon arriving at the elite training camp, Qin Hao did not go directly to Jiangnan Pavilion, but instead headed straight from the elite training camp to City 1001. There are two ways to graduate from the elite training camp. One is to be in the camp for 5 years, and the other is to become a god of war. The only option Qin Hao could choose was naturally to become a god of war. His strength had already reached that level. Now it was time for combat record certification. Arriving in City 1001, Qin Hao headed directly towards his target. For an ordinary god of war, it is very difficult to hunt Lord-level monsters. This is because Lord-level monsters are often accompanied by many other monsters, and their speed is faster than a god of war of the same realm. However, for Qin Hao, these were not problems. The strength of a high-level war god, coupled with perfect-level movement techniques and 2 times his normal power output, meant Qin Hao felt no pressure even when facing a senior lord. After arriving at the Komodo dragon's senior lord lair, Qin Hao immediately launched an attack and quickly ended the battle. The Komodo dragon, with dragon in its name, symbolized strength, yet it had no power to fight back against Qin Hao's attacks. After killing the Komodo dragon, Qin Hao directly dragged its body out of City 1001. To certify as a high-level war god, one senior lord monster was enough, and Qin Hao had no intention of wasting more effort. However, even though Qin Hao wanted to avoid trouble, trouble still found him. A Vajra ape appeared on the road and directly attacked Qin Hao. The result was similar. After a few exchanges, the Vajra ape also became a soul beneath Qin Hao's blade. Could these Komodo dragon and Vajra ape be the two monsters Luo Feng hunted when he certified as a high-level war god? Qin Hao couldn't help but think to himself as he looked at the two monsters. He remembered that in the original novel, Luo Feng had hunted a Komodo dragon and a Vajra ape. Dragging the two Lord-level monsters, Qin Hao left City 1001 and returned to the elite training camp. Although the two monsters were massive, they posed no burden under Qin Hao's strength of over 300,000 kilograms. Hello, this is Qin Hao. I need to get combat record certification and process some materials. I need you to arrange a manager to handle this. The total amount this time exceeds 10 billion, Qin Hao added at the end. Okay, sir, when will you arrive? The person on the other end of the phone asked quickly after a moment of stunned. I will arrive at the elite training camp in 20 minutes. Please arrange 2 vehicles to pick me up. Qin Hao replied, Okay, I will arrange the vehicles immediately. They will arrive at the elite training camp in 20 minutes, the receptionist quickly replied. Every student at the elite training camp was a top genius globally, and very few needed combat record certification. The minimum for any combat record certification was a novice god of war, and the one he encountered now was actually a god of war genius. 20 minutes later, Qin Hao appeared outside the elite training camp, dragging 2 enormous monster corpses. The Dojo of Limit's business department vehicles were already waiting. Qin Hao approached the cars and directly loaded the 2 monsters onto the 2 trucks. Hello, are you Mr. Qin Hao? The receptionist from the Dojo of Limit's building came up to Qin Hao and asked respectfully. He already knew it was a god of war, but he didn't expect him to have hunted 2 senior lords. This strength was considered top tier within the Dojo of Limits, so his tone of voice naturally held a little more respect. Yes, let's go. Qin Hao said, following the receptionist into the special car parked nearby. Qin Hao left, but the elite training camp immediately exploded. It was already the end of the holiday, and many students were returning to the elite training camp. Soon, the news of Qin Hao hunting 2 senior lords spread throughout the elite training camp. How is that possible? He's only 19 and has only been in the elite training camp for half a year. Isn't his strength only that of a mid-level god of war? How could he hunt senior lords? Impossible. How could his strength improve so quickly? Is Qin Hao graduating? Why is he choosing to graduate after only half a year in the elite training camp? The news of Qin Hao choosing to graduate quickly spread and was also relayed to various major powers through the elite training camp. Oh, he's chosen to graduate. Hong was also a bit confused and surprised by Qin Hao's decision to graduate, especially the fact that he had advanced from a mid-level god of war to a high-level war god in just one holiday seemed a bit strange. However, he didn't delve too deeply into it. Mr. Qin Hao, 2 women in work attire greeted him at the entrance. Let's go, Qin Hao said. The 2 women then directed the 2 trucks behind them into a massive hall. The Dojo of Limits building, as a unique structure of the Dojo of Limits in Hongning Base City, was primarily used for handling the business affairs of the dojo. The first floor was entirely a huge warehouse-like space, used for facilitating various monster material transactions. After the 2 trucks entered, a dozen or so staff members appeared, holding various machines to test the 2 monsters. After completing the tests, they nodded to a woman nearby and left. Hello, Mr. Qin Hao, my surname is Zhang, and I am responsible for this transaction. The Vajra ape is priced at 12 billion China yuan and has a contribution value of 5 million points. The Komodo Tyrannosaurus is priced at 18 billion China yuan and has a contribution value of 8 million points. Mr. Qin Hao, You will receive a total of 30 billion China yuan and 13 million contribution points, the woman said. No problem. Please help me with the combat record assessment and recertify my title. I killed both monsters myself, Qin Hao said. Mr. Qin Hao, 30 billion China yuan has been transferred to your warrior exclusive account, and your contribution value has been upgraded to 4-star. Your title certification has been submitted. Upon becoming a god of war, you will be invited to join the War God Palace and receive a consciousness inducer. However, the War God Palace will send someone to verify Mr. Qin Hao's strength, the woman surnamed Zhang said while operating a laptop. After she finished inputting all the information and submitting it, the screen displayed War God Palace application, assessing. Before she could speak, a ding sound rang out and a pop-up window appeared on the laptop. War God Palace assessment passed. Chapter 41. Traveling thousands of miles, the manager of the Dojo of Limits and the massive transport ship always left him feeling deeply impressed whenever he saw them. Entering through the main gate, Qin Hao, familiar with the way, arrived at Hong's study and pushed the door open. Curator. Qin Hao said, looking at Hong in the study. Not bad. I didn't expect you to become a high-level war god so quickly. Since you have already graduated, you now have 2 paths to choose from. One is to stay in Hongning Base City and join the Special Operations team of the dojo, and the other is to return to Jiangnan Base City and become an inspector. Hong said slowly, and after speaking, he looked at Qin Hao, waiting for his choice. Curator, I want to continue going out for training, Qin Hao said firmly. Neither the Special Operations team nor the inspector position was what Qin Hao wanted. For him now, the most important thing was to continue improving his strength. Closed-door training could no longer satisfy his growth needs. Very well, it's good for young people to go out and explore. Hong didn't say much about Qin Hao's decision. For him, the talent Qin Hao displayed shouldn't stop at high-level war god. To break through and surpass God of War, it couldn't be achieved merely by accumulating resources. After a brief exchange with Hong and asking some questions about cultivation, Qin Hao left and returned to the elite training camp, heading back to Jiangnan Pavilion. Qin Hao, I heard you applied for graduation, is that true? As soon as he entered Jiangnan Pavilion, Zhao Ruo quickly walked up to Qin Hao and asked, That's right, I've already applied for graduation. How is the Dojo of Limits arranging it? Will you be in Hongning Base City or Jiangnan Base City? Shijiang, who was nearby, also walked over and asked. He had some understanding of the arrangements for elite training camp students after graduation. Neither. Qin Hao didn't hide it and said, I applied to the curator to go out for training and will not be taking up a position within the dojo for now. Hearing Qin Hao's answer, Shijiang, Zhao Ruo, and Luo Feng, the 3 god ancestors, couldn't help but feel surprised. After all, there were rarely exceptions to the dojo's usual arrangements. Every investment in a martial artist had to yield returns. The investment in each student of the elite training camp was considerable, and taking up positions in various places was the process of getting that return. Now, Qin Hao had actually become an exception, which showed how much the Dojo of Limits, or rather Hong, valued him. Luo Feng, congratulations on officially joining the elite training camp. Qin Hao ignored the 3's shock and congratulated Luo Feng instead. Thank you, I didn't expect you to leave just as I arrived. Luo Feng's tone was also full of regret. He had thought he was about to catch up to Qin Hao, but he had just entered the camp, and Qin Hao had already graduated. I didn't tell my family about my graduation this time. I'll be training outside for a while, so I'll have to trouble you and Shijiang to help look after my family. Qin Hao said. When entering the wilderness area for training, Qin Hao planned to fully immerse himself in cultivation and comprehend nature. He wasn't sure if he could take care of matters at home. As a genius from China, Shijiang had a certain influence on the government, and Luo Feng was a martial artist of the Dojo of Limits, also living in Minju community, and their relationship was quite good. Their care would relieve him of his worries. No problem. Luo Feng and Shijiang replied in unison. After staying at the elite training camp for a day, Qin Hao left directly. Qin Hao did not choose to take a passenger plane, but instead walked directly from the elite training camp, beginning his path of cultivation. After leaving the elite training camp, Qin Hao began to walk on foot, moving at a steady pace through the wilderness area. He neither deliberately avoided monsters nor actively sought to fight them. As long as the monsters didn't provoke him, he wouldn't take the initiative to attack. As he walked, Qin Hao seemed immersed in this training or perhaps this journey. Like ancient ascetics, he sought enlightenment through arduous practice. He passed through mountains, crossed rivers, traversed forests, and waded through swamps. Qin Hao's steps did not stop. He even reached the seaside and directly chopped wood to build a boat, drifting on the ocean for a period of time. When he finally returned to land, his location was already at the original site of Qingdao, Shandong. Stepping onto land once again, Qin Hao continued his journey. He did not choose to enter a base city, but continued to experience life in the wilderness area. Within a month, Qin Hao's clothes were completely tattered. The clothes he wore now were entirely transformed from the Black Mountain set. At the foot of Mount Tai, Qin Hao ascended the steps. He walked step by step on the already damaged stairs, heading towards the summit. As a famous mountain of great importance in the hearts of the people of China, Mount Tai boasts many beautiful sceneries, poems, and numerous myths. In his previous life, Qin Hao had also visited Mount Tai, and the experience of climbing it was somewhat unbearable. His frail body was too tired to walk even before reaching the ticket booth. Mount Tai teaches every stubborn person a lesson, and Qin Hao was one of them. However, it was different now. With the physical quality of a high-level war god, let alone Mount Tai, he could easily ascend Mount Everest. Yet, for Qin Hao, reaching the summit was not the goal. The process of climbing was more important. Step by step, he ascended, gazing at the surrounding scenery of Mount Tai. Lush vegetation, ancient rocks that had remained unchanged for thousands of years, and the sun, moon, and stars that had been constant for eternity. Immersed in nature, he felt the vastness of heaven and earth and the wonder of creation. Everything around him seemed to come alive. The vitality of the trees, the profoundness of the rocks, the changes of the sun, moon, and stars. Immersed in this wondrous sensation, Qin Hao seemed to merge with his surroundings. The profound and mystical feeling brought Qin Hao an unprecedented sense of comfort, and his heart seemed to feel the joy of life. He reached the summit just at dawn. The first ray of sunlight pierced through the clouds, and a line of morning light transformed from gray to orange-red. The clouds in the sky, a blend of red and purple, and the vast expanse of rosy clouds merged with the boundless sea of clouds. Golden light radiated in all directions, dyeing the peaks, and a gust of wind blew, causing the sea of clouds to churn, as if a golden dragon was stirring up the rivers and overturning the seas. The creation of this world is indeed wondrous. Qin Hao couldn't help but exclaim, looking at the magical scenery before him. This was the power of heaven and earth, the creation of heaven and earth. As the surroundings changed, Qin Hao felt his perception of the wonder and agility of life become clearer. His long saber involuntarily unsheathed, and he began to dance with it. He didn't exert too much force, it was simply natural, his body constantly striking and retracting with the feeling. In each strike and form, the sense of power was lost, but a sense of agility and a vibrant vitality were added. The saber, which was primarily for killing and dominance, was wielded by Qin Hao with a different feeling. Is this the artistic conception I've comprehended? As he performed, Qin Hao's mind was constantly pondering. Knowledge about artistic conception continuously surged in his mind, and he gradually confirmed that what he had comprehended was indeed an artistic conception. However, artistic conception was ultimately something that could only be understood intuitively and not expressed in words, and everyone's state varied greatly, so Qin Hao could only slowly comprehend it on his own. Chapter 42, Field Prototype. After 3 days of comprehension atop Mount Tai, Qin Hao gained a certain understanding of the artistic conception, able to enter the state of artistic conception from time to time. However, he was still a bit short of fully integrating it into his attacks and movement techniques. Nevertheless, with a beginning, everything became simpler. The next step was a slow, continuous process of comprehension and refinement. Furthermore, Qin Hao also discovered the uniqueness of his own comprehension of artistic conception. The 10 major attributes, metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, thunder, light, time, and space, all have their own characteristics. The artistic conception Qin Hao was currently comprehending felt more inclined towards the wood attribute, yet it was also somewhat different, with a hint of life. Qin Hao was uncertain about his inner speculation. After all, although he had no memory of the wood attribute, it was strongly related to vitality and plants. As for the origin of life, it was too distant for the current Qin Hao. After leaving Mount Tai, Qin Hao did not choose to return home but continued his training. However, this time his goal was relatively clearer. After leaving Mount Tai, Qin Hao planned to visit the 3 mountains and 5 sacred mountains, as well as all the famous scenic spots from his previous life. With the insights gained on Mount Tai, Qin Hao gained certain comprehensions during his travels in various places. His understanding of heaven and earth gradually deepened, and his comprehension of artistic conception also gradually embarked on its journey, constantly being refined and deepened. After leaving Mount Amei, Qin Hao directly followed the Qinghai Tibet line, which started from Chengdu before the Great Nirvana, and began to advance towards the roof of the world. Entering this route, the surrounding environment became harsher, and the number of monsters significantly increased. Qin Hao didn't pay too much attention to this situation. The number of monsters is truly immense, almost comparable to those by the sea. During his time drifting at sea, Qin Hao had witnessed various monster attacks. Now, he felt as if he was back at sea, with various monsters attacking him from time to time. Before the Great Nirvana, the roof of the world itself was sparsely populated. After the Great Nirvana, the reproduction rate of various monsters further accelerated. Coupled with the geographical environment here, few martial artists specifically came here to hunt, which created a monster paradise. However, it was precisely in this environment that Qin Hao's perception of nature became clearer. The rampant growth of plants and their tenacious vitality greatly surprised Qin Hao. As his comprehension of artistic conception gradually deepened, Qin Hao also gradually began to comprehend the domain. To a certain extent, the domain is the sublimation of artistic conception. Artistic conception grasps the superficial, comprehension touches the core, and laws are the true core. In Hong's view, the domain is a sublimation after the unity of heaven and man, and it is also the resonance of spirit, gene energy, and cosmic energy, forming the domain. Qin Hao constantly pondered the content he had seen in Hong's cultivation experience, while also adding some of his own insights and descriptions of domains from his previous life. The domain is mentioned very limited times in Swallowed Star. In the early stages, it was a divine skill, but its presence weakened significantly in the later stages. Qin Hao felt very conflicted about the domain. In the world of Swallowed Star, the domain comes first. Only when the domain reaches a sufficient height will one come into contact with laws. However, in another novel by Tomato, one first comprehends laws, becomes a god, and then gains a domain. Although they are not the same world, they originate from the same author, so there must be some commonalities in their settings. Domain and law are inseparable parts. Domain is the symbol of a domain lord, and law is the symbol of a world lord. The domain, to a certain extent, has not disappeared. It should have transformed into a part of the world. This is also why when many world lords fight, it's directly the descent of a world phantom. Qin Hao's inspiration kept bubbling up, constantly diverging on issues like domain and law. Finally, he returned to artistic conception. So, what is the essence of artistic conception? Is it the superficial appearance of the world, the superficial appearance of laws, or the embryonic form of a domain? Qin Hao's doubts also continued to increase. Sometimes, the more one knows, the more it becomes a limitation. This was currently the case for Qin Hao. There were too many things in this world, but what he understood was only a very small part revealed in the novel. It could serve as a reference for him, but it could not become a limitation to his cultivation. After understanding this, Qin Hao felt very relaxed in his heart, his soul became much purer, and his entire being became much clearer. Comprehending while advancing, Qin Hao quickly arrived at the foot of Mount Everest, the peak of the world in his previous life. In his previous life, this was the limit for countless people, and very few completed the challenge. Now, this towering peak is rarely visited. After the Great Nirvana, the entire roof of the world is sparsely populated, and even fewer people come to challenge this peak. And for those who had the ability to come here, this towering peak posed no challenge to them. The rise of martial artists made this peak no longer a problem. After gazing at the foot of the mountain for a while, Qin Hao took a step and advanced towards Mount Everest. Having not been climbed for many years, the original route was completely buried by ice and snow, with only a few locations retaining faint traces, letting visitors know that there was once human presence here. Although there was no path, for Qin Hao, these were not obstacles. With the strength of a high-level war god, climbing the peak before him was like walking on flat ground. However, Qin Hao did not walk too fast. As he advanced, his mind and body were immersed in the surrounding heaven and earth, comprehending everything around him. As he continuously advanced, Qin Hao gradually entered a state of desirelessness and detachment, as if transcending heaven and earth. The cosmic energy around his body became very clear, involuntarily merging into his body. During the process of cosmic energy integration, the gene energy within Qin Hao's body also continuously vibrated, gradually forming an interaction with cosmic energy, merging and mutually influencing each other. Driven by cosmic energy, the gene energy also continuously underwent transformation, simultaneously driving the transformation of Qin Hao's body. This transformation began from the cells, gradually compensating for the body's differences. If Qin Hao had paid attention, he would have thought of the process of returning to the innate state from the acquired state, and the process of cleansing the marrow and essence described in novels of his previous life. However, at this moment, Qin Hao's attention was completely not on his body, but on the changes in the surrounding world. His mind was clear, fused with heaven and earth, unified with the universe. Qin Hao gradually entered the state of unity with heaven and man. At this time, he felt that his comprehension of artistic conception was continuously deepening, and he had a sense of control over his surroundings, as if he could bring everything around him under his control at any time. However, this feeling was both real and unreal. Soon, Qin Hao had already arrived at the summit of Mount Everest, and his mind gradually returned, but that sense of control did not disappear. Domain. No, the feeling of control is very false. It should only be the embryonic form of a domain. Qin Hao could still clearly pinpoint his current state. 10,000 meters beneath Mount Everest, a bright light flickered, as if a long-neglected machine had been activated. Beep, target detected. Elite student assessment begins. Teleportation preparation. Chapter 43, Source Star. Chapter 43, Source Star. Beep. Brain domain width greater than 30, field energy detected, apprentice level, conditions met, transmission beginning. Following this, a surge of energy shot up from 10,000 meters beneath Mount Everest. Accompanying this energy, patterns appeared on Mount Everest, and a strange energy formed a complex secret inscriptions pattern on the summit. Standing on the summit of Mount Everest, Qin Hao looked at everything around him, a sea of clouds. This was truly the feeling of looking down on all other mountains. Just as Qin Hao was immersed in the scenery of the summit, a flash of light pulsed beneath his feet, space shifted, everything around him completely vanished, and Qin Hao's figure disappeared from the summit. Where is this? The scenery around Mount Everest vanished, and Qin Hao looked at his surroundings. Broken mountains and land, and in the sky, numerous shattered stars, each no smaller than Earth. The place where Qin Hao stood was just outside a grand hall. The hall before him was thousands of meters tall, significantly taller than Mount Everest. Cracks covered the hall's surroundings as if it could collapse at any moment. The main entrance was completely shattered and gone, and looking through the doorway, a colossal 1,000-meter-tall throne stood in the center of the hall. Carefully stepping into the great hall, Qin Hao surveyed everything around him. To be directly transferred from the summit of Mount Everest to here, the only thing Qin Hao could think of was space law. To apply space law in such a way, it wasn't a universe exalt, but at least a king-level expert. "Welcome, Qin Hao," a clear, cold voice echoed through the hall. "Who are you and what is this place?" "This is my master's divine kingdom, and I am its administrator, Gu." As he spoke, an old man with white hair and a white beard appeared before Qin Hao. "After countless years of waiting, I have finally found you, the inheritor of Source Star," the old man said, looking at Qin Hao. "Source Star." Qin Hao was greatly shocked. Source Star was the name of an era on Earth. Hearing this name now, Qin Hao couldn't help but feel very puzzled, not expecting the legacy of Source Star to still exist. "Source Star was destroyed in the last era, and my master, Source Star King, has also fallen. Before his demise, my master transferred his divine kingdom to Source Star, awaiting the appearance of an inheritor. Now, my master's divine kingdom is on the verge of complete collapse, and finally, an inheritor has appeared." As if seeing Qin Hao's confusion, Gu slowly explained, "You only have 1 year to complete the assessment. If you fail, you will be destroyed along with the divine kingdom." After speaking, Gu walked towards the back of the hall. Qin Hao wanted to ask about the content of the assessment, but seeing Gu walk towards the back hall, he quickly followed. Along the way, he observed the magnificent palace, which was still filled with an awe-inspiring aura and immense pressure, leaving him both shocked and excited. Is this the aura of an undying? Although it was only a remnant, the power of the undying aura was still immensely strong for Qin Hao, who was merely an apprentice. Qin Hao even wondered if someone with weaker willpower could withstand the mental pressure brought by this power. Entering the back hall, Qin Hao followed Gu into an even larger back hall. It was even grander than the front hall. In fact, the moment he entered the back hall, Qin Hao felt a slight sense of disorientation. These 6 enlightenment steels are the legacy left by my master. They are replicas of the human race's treasure, the Chaos Steel. Although their effect is only 1% of the Chaos Steels, they are unique in the entire universe, Gu said, his voice filled with pride. "Your assessment is to fully comprehend the content of the first steel and pass the test in the virtual space," Gu said. Although the assessment time is only 1 year, this hall has been specially treated by my master to slow down the flow of time by 10 times, so you don't have to worry about disappearing for a long time. By the way, you are still just an apprentice. Here is a Muya crystal, which can help you break through to the planetary level. As he spoke, a Muya crystal appeared before Qin Hao. A fragrant, rice-like scent made Qin Hao feel a desire within his body to devour the Muya crystal before him. After Qin Hao took the Muya crystal, Gu's figure directly vanished. "I hope he can pass the test." In the depths of the hall, Gu's eyes were filled with sadness. In the back hall, Qin Hao held the Muya crystal in his hand, not immediately absorbing it, but carefully examining the state of the hall. Besides the 6 enlightenment steels, there were also many books. Basic Warrior 216 Forms, Introduction to Domain, 5 Elements Secret Technique. 9 Body Forging, a series of secret techniques, none too profound, but all precisely what Qin Hao needed most at the moment, especially the secret techniques explaining the first enlightenment steel. After examining the secret techniques, Qin Hao turned his attention to the enlightenment steels. 5 of the 6 enlightenment steels were blurry, with only the first one displaying clear lines before Qin Hao. These lines were both simple and profoundly mysterious. The moment Qin Hao saw them, he was involuntarily drawn in by the lines, immersing himself in their profound aura. The questions in Qin Hao's mind began to be continuously guided out by the lines at this moment, and new insights gradually emerged. However, this process did not last long before Qin Hao reawakened. "My strength is still too weak. It seems I need to first advance to the planetary level." After reawakening, Qin Hao also realized that an apprentice's strength was too weak. The content of the first image was not profound, but rather about the comprehension of domain, and Qin Hao felt a very complex aura from it. First, break through. Qin Hao took the Muya crystal, went to the cultivation area of the hall, sat cross-legged, and began to cultivate. One Muya crystal was enough to create a planetary-level expert. As Qin Hao began to cultivate, the energy of the Muya crystal was continuously absorbed. Qin Hao's body began to transform. His internal gene primary energy and cosmic energy began to converge, and with the augmentation of the Muya crystal's energy, the speed continuously accelerated. The transformation of his body surprised Qin Hao. This phenomenon was somewhat similar to the process of returning to innate from acquired in novels. However, he didn't have much time to delve into it now, and he fully focused his attention on the breakthrough. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Cosmic energy, gene primary energy, and the pure life energy of the Muya crystal converged around Qin Hao's body, forming a massive vortex. Once formed, the vortex continuously absorbed all surrounding energy, washing over Qin Hao's body and integrating into every single cell, driving the transformation of Qin Hao's body. At the location of Qin Hao's Danshan, energy continuously gathered, gradually solidifying into a physical form, condensing into a tiny planet. After this planet formed, its speed of energy absorption rapidly increased. The planet continuously expanded, contracted, then expanded again, then contracted again. Within the pure energy, red, gold, green, yellow, and blue energies continuously integrated into the planet. There were even faint traces of golden and silver energies merging in. Chapter 44 Planetary Level and New Check-in, a 5-colored planet was born, and Qin Hao also officially entered the planetary level. Feeling the power in his body, Qin Hao couldn't help but smile slightly. Now on Earth, he truly had the ability to protect himself and the right to speak, and he could begin his plan in the swallowed star world. After completing the breakthrough, Qin Hao's consciousness entered his sea of consciousness, and the simple control panel lit up again. He clicked on the check-in button. Second annual check-in obtained. Life element lower godhead, planetary level check-in obtained. 1 drop of Kong Shuan's blood. As the check-in ended, 2 streams of light shot out from the panel, appearing in Qin Hao's sea of consciousness, 3 godheads full of life energy, and a drop of blood with 5-colored light floating on its surface hovered in the sea of consciousness. Kong Shuan's blood. Looking at the drop of blood in his sea of consciousness, Qin Hao was filled with surprise. Kong Shuan, son of the Phoenix, inherently controls the 5 elements laws, and his innate divine ability is the 5-colored divine light. He even dares to confront a saint, definitely a peak expert in the primordial world. Even if it was just ordinary blood, the energy contained in the blood of such a powerful being would absolutely surpass most experts in the swallowed star world. Just as Qin Hao was still immersed in the shock of Kong Shuan's blood, the Kong Shuan's blood in his sea of consciousness seemed to have sentience, directly passing through the sea of consciousness and appearing above Qin Hao's head. My Kong Shuan's blood, where is that large drop of Kong Shuan's blood? When he saw the Kong Shuan's blood disappear from his sea of consciousness, Qin Hao repeatedly scanned his sea of consciousness. Finally, feeling a pressure, he opened his eyes. A drop of 5-colored blood was hovering above his head. And in an instant, this drop of blood transformed and a gigantic peacock phantom appeared. The peacock phantom, thousands of kilometers tall, directly enveloped the entire palace, even appearing outside the palace. After the peacock phantom appeared, its intelligent eyes scanned the entire divine kingdom, even peering through the divine kingdom to scan the entire earth, and then rapidly expanded towards the entire primordial universe. As the peacock scanned the entire universe, a powerful will awakened and rapidly collided with the peacock. The peacock did not care, quickly retracted its gaze, and its form continuously condensed, finally solidifying around Qin Hao's body, its energy becoming increasingly solid, forming a gigantic blood cocoon that completely enveloped Qin Hao. The moment he was enveloped by the blood-colored giant cocoon, Qin Hao felt as if he had entered a 5-colored world. The profound and abstruse fluctuations around him caused Qin Hao to become immersed in them. While his mind was completely enveloped by the five-colored world, the energy of the blood-colored giant cocoon continuously merged into Qin Hao's body. However, the powerful energy was far from what Qin Hao, a mere planetary level, could withstand. The power of the meteor tears in his heart began to release, continuously repairing Qin Hao's body. The crimson bright nine heavens diagram also began to operate, continuously strengthening Qin Hao's body. Three forces awakened simultaneously, constantly vying for power and constantly colliding. Just as the three energies were continuously colliding, a powerful will descended from the void. With the descent of this will, the surrounding spacetime also stopped. After seemingly observing Qin Hao's condition for a while, this powerful will began to recede. Subscribe for more amazing novel audiobooks. Don't forget to like, comment, and share Infinite Novel Audio. As it receded, a flash of light appeared in the void, transforming into a beam of light that merged into Qin Hao's body. As this light merged, a base point appeared in Qin Hao's Danshan, rapidly absorbing the surrounding power and gradually forming a new world. Within the world, mountains, continents, oceans, and sky were all present. At the same time, a ray of light appeared in Qin Hao's sea of consciousness within the world, and the surrounding power began to rapidly gather, condensing into a giant cocoon, and a figure began to gestate. After this figure appeared, a powerful devouring force was produced, rapidly absorbing the energy of Kong Xuan's blood around Qin Hao through the world. The appearance of this figure rapidly absorbed over 90% of Kong Xuan's blood power. What exactly happened? What kind of special life form was that peacock phantom, and what about that will? Gu, the ancient figure, appeared beside Qin Hao, looking at Qin Hao within the giant cocoon, thinking with lingering fear. Although he had seen much of the world with Source Star King, neither the peacock phantom nor that powerful will were within his comprehension. This kid's opportunity, Gu looked at Qin Hao, feeling envious. This time, Source Star can truly be passed down. 10 months passed in a flash. During these 10 months, Qin Hao had been cultivating unconsciously. His mind was immersed in the five-colored world, constantly observing the surrounding fluctuations, wanting to memorize everything. His body continuously gestated within the giant cocoon, his inner world continuously expanded, and the clone within the world gradually completed. It's finally over. Qin Hao opened his eyes, a hint of vicissitude in them. In the five-colored world, there was no concept of time passing. After a long period, Qin Hao went from initial excitement to gradually becoming fatigued, especially the obscure fluctuations. Even with Qin Hao's diligent effort, he only comprehended a tiny bit. Qin Hao stood up, feeling the power in his body. His body floated, a characteristic of the planetary level. However, his bodily strength far surpassed planetary level 1, and Qin Hao even felt he could vaguely sense a strange fluctuation. Qin Hao had some guesses about this fluctuation, but he couldn't be sure if it was truly what he thought. After all, his comprehension had improved significantly before, but it was far from the point where he could so clearly sense the fluctuations of the laws. I wonder how much time has passed. 10 months, Gu's voice appeared before Qin Hao. You spent 10 months this time. Your genetic level reached 9 times, your strength is planetary level stage 3, and your metal, wood, water, fire, and earth elements have all reached domain level 1, Gu said, explaining Qin Hao's condition to him. What? Qin Hao, upon hearing Gu's words, carefully felt the changes in his body. The powerful strength and the vague sense of laws both indicated that his genes had been enhanced. 3 planets in his Danshan also indicated that he had reached planetary level stage 3. However, what surprised Qin Hao even more was that besides the 3 planets in his Danshan, there was also a gigantic world, a world over 1,000 kilometers wide, with a colossal human figure standing within it, hundreds of miles tall, exuding a noble aura. Is this my clone? This figure was precisely the clone gestated by the one Kai transforms into 3 Pure One's divine ability, which, with the power of Kong Xuan's blood, had its genetic level reach 1,000 times. Moreover, it had an extremely high affinity for metal, wood, water, fire, earth, time, and space, over 1,000 times that of the main body. Chapter 45. Strength surges within his internal world. Qin Hao's clone rapidly shrunk from over 1,000 kilometers to the same height as Qin Hao. This clone bore a 7/10 resemblance to Qin Hao's face and exuded a mysterious aura, possessing a natural affinity. Feeling the condition of his clone, Qin Hao also felt incredibly amazed. This clone had an independent soul yet was intimately connected to him. He could also enter the clone's body, and the clear law fluctuations surrounding him made Qin Hao involuntarily feel like he was about to immerse himself in them. After shifting his attention from the clone, Qin Hao turned his gaze to his internal world. The world was vast, but although it belonged to him, he couldn't fully control it. It was somewhat similar to the golden-horned beast's internal world in the original work, but even more advanced. Leaving his internal world, Qin Hao's consciousness entered his sea of consciousness. The one Kai transforms into 3 pure ones, which originally had 3 rays of light, now only had 2. Not far away, a green divinity was filled with the aura of life. This was the life attribute divinity he had obtained from this year's check-in. Besides these, there was still a ray of light in his sea of consciousness. This ray of light was filled with dazzling colors, and within it, the creation and destruction of worlds seemed to be constantly replayed. As his consciousness delved into the light, Qin Hao felt himself entering a void space. In this void space, an energy appeared and began to continuously evolve a space with mountains, plants, rivers, oceans, and stars constantly forming within it, clearly the process of creating a world. One thought creates world. As the world evolved, the method of creating a world continuously merged into Qin Hao's soul, giving Qin Hao a heavy feeling. The method of creating a world. Qin Hao didn't know how to evaluate this secret technique in his heart. A world lord could naturally open up a world. For a planetary-level cultivator to obtain the method of creating a world now was useless, as his internal energy couldn't support it at all. What exactly does primordial universe mean? After accepting all the information, Qin Hao also knew that the secret technique was bestowed by the primordial universe. Having it is better than not having it. After checking the changes in his body, Qin Hao was very satisfied. Although the improvement brought by Kong Xuan's blood wasn't as dramatic as he had imagined, the enhancement to his foundation, talent, and potential exceeded Qin Hao's expectations. A 3-fold increase in basic gene level, a 3-fold increase in the first stage of Crimson Bright 9 Heavens diagram, a 9-fold gene level. That's completely enough for the early stages. The improvement in gene level was arguably the most significant for Qin Hao, as opportunities to improve genes in the primordial universe were very rare. After sensing the changes in his body, Qin Hao's mind stirred, and his domain manifested, enveloping a 10-meter radius around him. Under the golden light, Qin Hao felt a subtle fluctuation, which was precisely the law of metal. Subsequently, Qin Hao continuously switched, and the domain of wood, water domain, domain of fire, and earth domain were continuously displayed, all allowing him to sense the fluctuations of the laws. Ancient One, Qin Hao bowed slightly to Ancient One beside him and continued to ask, "What is the trial you mentioned? It's similar to your Dojo of Limits trial tower, but it's stricter. Even with your current strength, you only have a chance of passing it," Ancient One replied. As he spoke, he waved his hand, and a virtual screen appeared before them. 7 7-story trial towers appeared before Qin Hao. These 7 trial towers were set by the master in imitation of the virtual universe's trial tower. Even to pass the first one, you need to comprehend laws. Your trial is to pass the first level of the first tower, Ancient One said. Qin Hao looked at the trial tower and had a guess in his heart. The 7 trial towers in the virtual universe's genius training ground, even the first one, far surpassed the trial tower in the extreme training camp. Everyone qualified to participate in the trial tower trial was a genius from various cosmic countries, but most were eliminated in the first tower. You have one chance to challenge the trial tower each month. When you pass the first level, you can leave with all of the master's inheritances. This smart wristband can take you into virtual space at any time. After Ancient One finished speaking, his figure disappeared again. Putting the smart wristband on his hand, Qin Hao once again came before the first Enlightenment tablet. The originally profound lines now appeared incredibly clear and vibrant. Each line made Qin Hao involuntarily immerse himself in it. This time, these lines were no longer so obscure and difficult to understand. All the secrets were clearly presented in Qin Hao's eyes. So that's how it is. Domain can actually be like this. The domain of metal was originally like this. Immersed in comprehension, Qin Hao's understanding of domain continuously deepened, and his domain involuntarily released. As Qin Hao comprehended, his domain continuously changed. In one day, his domain of metal transformed from the first stage to the second stage. Subsequently, the domain of wood, water domain, domain of fire, and earth domain successively broke through to the second stage. After all domains reached the second stage, and after 2 days of consolidation, Qin Hao stopped his comprehension. He stood up and walked towards the bookshelf nearby. Although being immersed in domain comprehension allowed Qin Hao to clearly feel his growth, the accumulation of power exertion levels and combat experience was equally crucial. Arriving at the bookshelf, he picked up Warrior Basic 216 Forms and began to read it. The basic 216 forms were not profound. After reading it once, Qin Hao began to practice. Qin Hao's own comprehension was good, and after absorbing Kong Xuan's blood and undergoing transformation, his comprehension improved even more significantly. Moreover, while his main body was cultivating, the clone in his internal world was also continuously cultivating. Under this double acceleration, Qin Hao's power exertion was continuously improving. 3 days later, the Warrior Basic 216 forms were already very proficient. His power exertion level had also reached 12 times, a level that was unique on Earth. However, for the current Qin Hao, this was just the beginning. After all, with a 1,000-fold gene multiple, his comprehension, strength, affinity for laws, and other aspects were 1,000 times that of ordinary people. Furthermore, he was already a genius, and the various enhancements he received far exceeded ordinary people. 1 day of cultivation could even be equivalent to tens of thousands of times that of an ordinary person. Initiate trial. After 3 days of cultivation, Qin Hao prepared to challenge the first level of the trial tower. Upon entering the first level of the trial tower, 10,000 Mang Ox appeared around Qin Hao. Each Mang Ox was at the planetary level. Upon seeing Qin Hao appear, the herd quickly charged towards him. Qin Hao immediately unfolded his domain, the twofold domain of metal rapidly expanding. The long saber in his hand was ready to strike at any moment. At the instant of impact, Qin Hao's attack began. Each strike targeted the vital point of a Mang Ox, and the first Mang Ox immediately fell to the ground and disappeared. However, before Qin Hao could prepare, the impact of the Mang Ox herd came one after another. Before Qin Hao could attack, his figure was already submerged by the Mang Ox. The Earth arc is going to accelerate its conclusion. The pace will pick up a bit. Chapter 46, Domain Fusion. Coming out of the trial tower, Qin Hao couldn't help but smile bitterly. From becoming a martial artist until now, it could be said that his journey had been smooth sailing, but he hadn't expected the trial tower, which he originally thought would be simple, to be so difficult. He couldn't even last for a moment on the first level, and this was just the first level. I still underestimated the geniuses of the entire universe. Qin Hao had a deep realization of his own arrogance. The Golden Finger Plus being a transmigrator, coupled with his recently surging strength, had led to a deviation in Qin Hao's perception of his own power. Now, after this brief battle, he had completely sobered up. One must know that, in the virtual universe's genius battle, even Luo Feng, who had already comprehended the law of metal and could activate the Yan God weapon, was not considered capable of entering the top 1,000 in the genius battle. The top geniuses selected from countless humans in each universe country were at least at domain level 9, touching upon the existence of laws. After his defeat, Qin Hao once again threw himself into cultivation. His comprehension of domains, his insights from the Enlightenment steel, and his understanding of power exertion had become his daily routine. The changes brought about by Kong Xuan's bloodline transformation became apparent at this time. His high affinity for the five elements laws allowed Qin Hao to advance rapidly on the path of comprehension. Within a month, his five elements domains all progressed to the fifth level, and his laws became even clearer. His clone directly reached domain level 9, comprehending a trace of the law of metal. Such a speed of law comprehension left Qin Hao himself feeling very shocked. After all, in the original work, an astral rank who could comprehend even a trace of law was considered a genius. However, compared to his clone, Qin Hao also felt the limitations of his main body. Even with the clone's comprehension, the genetic gap made it difficult for Qin Hao to fully digest the clone's insights. This was not only a physical gap, but more so a gap in soul and will. The power of laws determined their difficulty, far beyond what a planetary-level soul and body could bear. It was like a giant hammer. Even if one could touch and understand it, it was very difficult to truly apply it. Only those with naturally high genetic levels, like his clone, with extremely strong basic abilities in all aspects, could withstand it. Qin Hao did not dwell too much on this point. Instead, he dedicated more time to comprehending domains. Through intensive study of the Enlightenment steel and auxiliary cultivation, Qin Hao also gained some understanding of Source Star King's path. The first Enlightenment steel guided him towards the five elements domains, so it was highly likely that the subsequent ones would be about the five elements laws, and perhaps even involve some space-time law. The path he was taking was very likely the path of five elements laws fusion. It must be said that this path was not easy, and Source Star King did not complete it. However, Qin Hao was not deterred by these facts. The path of fusion laws was a path that he would inevitably have to take in the future. Before becoming a divine king, it was all a process of law fusion. Only with the chaos law, formed by the 10 great laws fusion, could one break through to the level of a chaos master. Although his main body had not yet comprehended laws, domains were also a part of laws. As Qin Hao comprehended domains, he also continuously delved into the fusion of the five elements domains. In the world of Swallowed Star, early laws were all about pairing a lower law with a higher laws to break through to the venerable level, and then fusing laws or comprehending space-time law to reach the realm of a universe lord. The importance placed on the fusion of lower laws could be said to be not very high. However, for Qin Hao, who knew the future path, comprehending lower laws and fusing lower laws had to be completed in the early stages. Even as a world lord, he needed to complete the comprehension and fusion of laws. It was perfectly fine to slow down the comprehension of higher laws. Especially now, the talent he displayed in the five elements laws made his plan even simpler. Kong Xuan's talent, even if only one in a billion, was completely sufficient to comprehend the five elements laws. It's been a year, and even with a tenfold time flow, more than a month has passed. The passage of time made Qin Hao somewhat anxious. While improving his strength was one aspect, being out of contact with his family for a long time would inevitably worry them, and this was not what Qin Hao wanted to see. Start Challenge Qin Hao once again arrived at the first-level space of the Trial Tower. Facing the approaching Mang Ox herd, Qin Hao unleashed his domain and charged towards the herd. Only by taking the initiative can I seize the upper hand. After the previous battle, Qin Hao also knew that passively waiting for the Mang Ox to charge offered no hope of victory. Charging into the Mang Ox herd, the domain of metal quickly enveloped the surrounding Mang Ox, attacking at an extremely fast speed. After the attack was completed, the domain of metal retracted, and at the same time, the earth domain was released. Standing on the ground, unmoving like a mountain, he faced the incoming attacks. In the gaps between attacks, he created opportunities to break free and move away. The moment he leaped into the air, his wood domain opened, and life energy quickly gathered, making his body's injuries and fatigue disappear. Simultaneously, the fire domain spread out, and a powerful burst of energy erupted from the air, directly falling into the Mang ox herd, taking out dozens more Mang ox. The moment he landed, the water domain opened, and a mist rose, enveloping the surrounding dozens of meters. Qin Hao seemed to transform into an assassin, continuously attacking the bewildered Mang ox. The 5 elemental domains switched constantly, each mastered as if an extension of his arm. However, even so, Qin Hao gradually felt strained. With tens of thousands of Mang ox, even though Qin Hao's strength had increased tenfold, it was still difficult to gain an advantage. Even though the 5 domains allowed him to easily deal with the Mang ox under the suppression of sheer numbers, Qin Hao still found it difficult to gain an advantage. The wounds on Qin Hao's body gradually increased, and even under the wood domain, it was difficult for them to recover quickly. Often, before the Mang ox under domain suppression could be cleared, more Mang ox had already charged in. The dozens of meters of domain were gradually filled with countless Mang ox, and the pressure on Qin Hao, in the center of the domain, suddenly increased. A domain could achieve an invincible state at the same level, but it was not without consumption. One must know that in the original work, in the 7th Trial Tower's first level of the Genius Battle, in a one-on-one situation, Balin had an absolute advantage, yet he still failed under the sheer number of opponents. Qin Hao continuously killed while constantly adjusting his domain. The domains gradually overlapped, but the effect was still very limited. Under immense pressure, the domain even showed signs of collapsing. However, Qin Hao did not give up. Under extreme pressure, Qin Hao's heart stirred. The power of the domain continuously contracted, and all the power in his body rapidly condensed, quickly gathering completely in Qin Hao's left hand. The moment the one thought creates world secret technique was cast, his genetic energy was rapidly consumed, and the 5 elements domains seemed to ignite, rapidly melting and fusing with the genetic energy, transforming into a black base point. Looking at the fused 5 elements domains, Qin Hao was shocked, carefully observing every step of the melting process, wanting to record it all. However, this process was extremely fast and the base point quickly formed. Before Qin Hao could react, the formed base point rapidly collapsed, and a huge burst of energy emanated. The powerful force formed a massive shockwave, and the first to be attacked was Qin Hao himself. His body instantly turned to dust, and the surrounding Mang ox herd also disappeared directly. Hu, his consciousness returned. Qin Hao gasped for breath, his eyes filled with both terror and excitement. Chapter 47. The Kingdom of God is destroyed. It had been half a year since Qin Hao graduated from the elite training camp. In those 6 months, Luo Feng's rapid growth became the topic of the elite training camp, following Qin Hao. Qin Hao hasn't been heard from for several months. Nothing bad could have happened to him, right? Zhao Ruo asked, sitting with Shijiang and Luo Feng in Jiangnan Pavilion. Nothing should happen to him. Qin Hao is already a high-level war god and has the Black God's suit. Even a warrior beyond a god of war would find it difficult to kill him easily, Shijiang said. As a genius of the dojo of limits, as long as he wasn't killed immediately, he could directly contact the dojo. No warrior beyond a god of war globally would be willing to take that risk. That's right. Qin Hao went out for training. He must be immersed in his cultivation. Luo Feng said, quite familiar with Qin Hao's cultivation madness. Before the college entrance exam, he cultivated frantically to become a quasi-warrior, and in the elite training camp, stories of Qin Hao's crazy cultivation were often heard. I hope so. Zhao Ruo said, still with some worry in her tone. Instead of worrying about Qin Hao, you should worry about yourselves. You're about to embark on a life and death adventure in Australia, Shijiang said solemnly. Even veteran students were extremely cautious about life and death adventures. Luo Feng listened to the two discussing the life and death adventure, and he also took it very seriously. While Luo Feng, Zhao Ruo, and Shijiang were preparing for the life and death adventure, Qin Hao once again entered the trial tower. Nearly 2 months had passed in the outside world, but Qin Hao had spent about a year and a half inside. The results of a year and a half of cultivation were fully displayed at this moment. Entering the trial tower, Qin Hao showed no panic. Facing the herd of Mang ox, he advanced calmly, his speed increasing exponentially with each step. His speed reached its peak just before he made contact with the Mang ox herd, and at the same time, a 5-colored light flashed around him as all 5 elements of his domain were released. The 9 layers of the domain overlapped, and the surrounding Mang ox herd was instantly suppressed by the domain upon contact, turning into dust in a flash. The entire process was incredibly strange, as if their life force had been completely absorbed. This was Qin Hao's new understanding of the domain after a year and a half, a slight fusion of the 5-element domain. With the wood domain as the core fusion mode, while enhancing Qin Hao's own physical recovery ability, it could also absorb the enemy's life force. 10 hours later, all the Mang ox on the first layer of the trial tower disappeared, and Qin Hao's figure vanished, reappearing on the second layer. On a vast plain, 10,000 blood-colored mammoths appeared on the ground. Although they were all planetary level, the blood-colored mammoths and the Mang ox were like the difference between a common monster and an elite monster. The blood-colored mammoths, with their high HP, thick flesh, and strong bodies, brought even greater pressure. However, Qin Hao, fresh from the battle on the first layer, was in an excited state. His domain fully activated, he charged towards the blood-colored mammoths. After a brief clash, the blood-colored mammoths were still being rapidly slaughtered by Qin Hao. However, the power of the planetary level could not break through the numerical suppression on the domain. After slaying over 1,000 blood-colored mammoths, Qin Hao's body was overwhelmed and disappeared from the trial tower. My strength is still too low. Although the domain is powerful, its consumption is also great, far from what a planetary level can fully master. Qin Hao had a clear understanding of his failure. The domain was standard for territory lord rank, and while many geniuses also comprehended the domain to become invincible at the same rank, the meaning was completely different. A territory lord rank could unleash 100% of the domain's power, a universe rank less than 50%, an astral rank less than 20%, and a planetary level less than 5%. The domain was like a heavy weapon. In the hands of someone with natural divine strength, it was a sharp tool, but in the hands of an ordinary person, it could only be a burden. The next step is to comprehensively improve my strength and break through to the astral rank. Qin Hao set a new goal for himself. Now that I've passed the first layer of the trial tower, let's see how many good things Source Star King left behind. I didn't expect you to complete the assessment so quickly. Now, follow me to my master's treasury. Without Qin Hao's summons, Ancient One had already appeared before him, and the back hall's door had opened. After the master became a champion, he entered the outside territory battlefield to fight in the starfield, obtaining many heavy treasures, all of which are in the treasury. Ancient One said, a deep sense of longing flashing in his eyes. The heavy treasures in the treasury include secret technique, heavy treasure, and various resources collected by the master, heavy treasures of all attributes. The two quickly arrived before a treasury. The giant door, over 100 meters high, slowly opened under Ancient One's operation. This treasury is entirely made of G-grade metal, which is extremely precious even in the universe. Entering the treasury, the entire space was enormous, filled with various exotic heavy treasures, emitting brilliant light. Ancient One did not stop but continued deeper into the treasury. These heavy treasures were all collected by the master in the outside territory battlefield, war trophies obtained by the master from slaying strong individuals of various races. Ancient One explained as he walked, introducing the origins of some heavy treasures. Weapons of monster race champion, rare ores snatched from undying of the insect race, and various exotic heavy treasures obtained from the outside territory battlefield. Soon, the two arrived at the deepest part of the treasury, on a massive altar. This is the core of the entire treasury. Your information has been entered, and you can enter anytime. The 3 world ring above are the core of the master's legacy. The first ring contains all the secret technique of the Master and Source Star. The second world ring is the various five-element resources collected by the Master. The third ring is the heavy treasure obtained by the Master from the Star Tower in the outside territory battlefield. Unfortunately, the Master had not fully refined it before he fell, Ancient One said mournfully. Take these three world ring for now. However, although you have completed the Master's trial and obtained his legacy, you still have a long way to go in the future. Next, I will guide your cultivation on behalf of the Master. Saying this, Ancient One handed a smart wristband to Qin Hao. I'll trouble Ancient One from now on, Qin Hao said sincerely. Although he had made progress, Qin Hao was still somewhat dissatisfied. The 9X gene plus talent transformation should not have had such limited effects. Prepare to leave here now. The commotion you caused last time was too great. The Master's divine kingdom is on the verge of collapse. Ancient One said, leading Qin Hao outside the main hall, then collecting the hall into a world ring. A massive secret technique array appeared on the ground. This is a secret technique left by the Master based on his comprehension of space law, which can teleport us outside the divine kingdom. The surrounding energy began to gather, and the power of the secret technique was rapidly activated. As the secret technique was activated, the surrounding space began to shatter, and the stars of the entire divine kingdom began to break apart, turning into nothingness inch by inch. The turbulent power continuously impacted the great array formed by the secret technique. As more power swept in, the secret technique array transformed into a ray of light, carrying Qin Hao and disappearing within the divine kingdom. Chapter 48, Going Home. Chapter 48. Coming home on the summit of Mount Everest, Qin Hao's figure appeared. Seeing the unchanged environment around him, Qin Hao did not linger. His body ascended into the sky and quickly headed in the direction of Jiangnan Base City. His flight speed rapidly soared, 1,000 meters per second, 2,000 meters per second, 3,000 meters per second. The speed was still increasing, and it soon reached 5,000 meters per second, gradually stabilizing. Such a speed already far exceeded the planetary level Stage 3. However, if he released his domain, Qin Hao's speed could be further increased. High in the sky, Qin Hao's speed rapidly cut through, and even flying monster beasts dared not approach in the slightest. At this extreme speed, Qin Hao soon appeared near Jiangnan Base City. At the same time, inside the military base of Jiangnan Base City. Alarm, alarm, alarm. An abnormal flying object is approaching. Activate the defense system, lock on immediately, and be ready to attack at any time. Target being captured, it's human. Target information being deciphered. Target confirmed. Which beyond War God level has arrived at Jiangnan Base City. Target information confirmed. Name, Qin Hao. Identity, Dojo of Limits Martial Artist. Title level, High Level War God. Soon, the information was broadcast. Stop the attack immediately, report the information. Our China has produced another, beyond War God level expert. As the military intelligence was reported, the news of Qin Hao becoming a god of war quickly reached the hands of the military high command. From becoming a martial artist to becoming a god of war, disappearing for half a year, and reappearing as a beyond War God level expert, Qin Hao's growth experience was collected in meticulous detail. Qin Hao was unaware of these matters. After entering the vicinity of Jiangnan Base City, he descended from the sky, entered the military zone, took a special train back to Jiangnan Base City, and then returned to YZ City from Jiangnan Base City. I'm back, Qin Hao called out as he entered the house. Brother, brother. No sooner had he spoken than Qin Ying's joyful voice rang out from the living room, followed by a small figure rushing over. Qin Hao quickly stepped forward and hugged Qin Ying. Stinky brother, you ignored me for so long, Qin Ying said, her small fists continuously pounding Qin Hao. For his family, it had been a few months, but for Qin Hao, it had been over 2 years. You're back, Qin Hai and Wang Su said, a hint of relief in their tone. In the first few months, Qin Hao would frequently contact his family, but in the recent months there had been no news at all, making them very worried. For several months returning home, Qin Hao felt completely relaxed, both physically and mentally. However, before Qin Hao could fully relax, the doorbell rang. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. Hearing the doorbell, Qin Hao stepped to the door, opened it, and recognized the visitor at first glance. It was Jie Yi, China's strongest expert, a legendary figure, and someone frequently mentioned in school textbooks. Qin Hao, hello, Jie Yi said with a smile upon seeing Qin Hao. I didn't expect you to return, Councilman Jie, please come in. As he ushered Jie Yi into the house, Qin Hai and Wang Su, who had come over upon hearing the commotion, were filled with shock at seeing Jie Yi in their home. China's #1 expert appearing in their house. Qin Hao's parents' generation could be said to have grown up listening to Jie Yi's legends and had witnessed the contributions he had made. Hello, Jie Yi's tone was still very polite. My visit this time is to discuss some matters with Qin Hao. I apologize for the disturbance. Welcome, welcome. Qin Hai and Wang Su said excitedly. Councilman Jie Yi, let's talk in the cultivation room. With that, Qin Hao walked towards the cultivation room. After entering the cultivation room, the two sat down in the lounge area beside it. I wonder what brings Councilman Jie here this time. Qin Hao took a bottle of water from beside his seat, opened it, and handed it to Jie Yi, asking, when you approached Jiangnan Base City, you were detected. I didn't expect you to have broken through so quickly. Taking a sip of water, Jie Yi said, I'll be straightforward. Have you considered joining the military? Right now, I only want to focus my energy on cultivation, Qin Hao said after thinking for a moment. Both in his previous life and now, Qin Hao was Chinese and had a strong sense of belonging to China. Before obtaining the golden finger, he had also planned to join the military. However, I can provide some resources to the military. Qin Hao looked at Jie Yi and made a decision in his heart. Whether for the country or for Jie Yi, some resources were insignificant to Qin Hao. However, they could change the country's influence in the world and also change Jie Yi's future fate. Such a legendary figure, who dedicated his life to the country, should not have the same ending as in the original work. Ancient One, send me the basic martial artist 216 forms, elementary domain understanding, as well as various weapon martial arts at the Source Star apprentice level, and planetary level attribute secret techniques, to my communicator, Qin Hao said to Ancient One in his mind. All right. Following the reply, files appeared on Qin Hao's communicator one by one. I obtained a legacy during my travels, which contains many secret techniques that can be shared with the country. At the same time, I also have some Mu-Ya crystals that can be contributed to the country. With that, Qin Hao transmitted the files on his communicator to Jie Yi, then stood up and walked out of the cultivation room. Having received the Source Star King's legacy, although basic materials like Mu-Ya crystals were not abundant, there were still some, prepared for the inheritors. Taking 10 Mu-Ya crystals from the World Ring, Qin Hao turned and walked back. After Qin Hao left, Jie Yi was attracted by the content that appeared on his communicator. He clicked on the basic martial artist 216 forms and began to read. The force exertion techniques and cultivation methods of each form made the doubts that had troubled him gradually dissipate. He gained a completely new understanding of force exertion. It turns out our methods of exerting force were all wrong, all wrong. This is the correct path. Jie Yi's hands couldn't help but tremble. Rising from the great nirvana, he had witnessed the world's turmoil and the rise of powerful forces, and he knew even more about the preciousness of these secret techniques, especially the elementary domain understanding. Why Hong could become the world's #1 was partly due to his domain, and it was the most important aspect. However, upon flipping through elementary domain understanding, the content was extremely abstruse, making it difficult to gain anything in a short time. Nevertheless, having obtained it and having guidance, there would always be gains in the future. As Jie Yi excitedly flipped through the secret techniques sent by Qin Hao also walked in. The fragrance of the Mu-Ya crystals in his hand drew Jie Yi's attention away from the secret techniques. Mu-Ya crystal. Is this a Mu-Ya crystal? Indeed. These are Mu-Ya crystals I obtained from the legacy. One can create a planetary level expert. However, I suggest that Councilman Ji keep a portion to improve his own strength. After all, quality is far more important than quantity. The major forces of the world would also not want to see too many beyond war god level experts suddenly appear in China. Chapter 49, Seeing Hong Again. Chapter 49. See Hong again. After seeing Jia Yi off, Qin Hao rested at home for a few days before heading to the elite training camp in Hongning Base City. It was almost time for the elite training camp's life and death tempering, and Qin Hao planned to meet Luo Feng, Zhao Ruo, and Shi Jiang, as well as Hong. Additionally, he also prepared to go to Australia to observe Fog Island as the plot unfolded. In the few years before entering the universe, Qin Hao had also made arrangements for himself, with the core still being the improvement of his strength. However, to pass the boring time and witness some events in this world, it was also a good arrangement. Still, he traveled from YZ City to Jiangnan Base City, then took a passenger plane to Hongning Base City. Although there were not a few spacecraft among Source Star King's wealth, they were too high profile for the current Qin Hao. At the elite training camp, all the students had begun to gather, preparing to embark on their life and death tempering. Why hasn't Hong arrived yet? All the students in the entire training camp were very much looking forward to Hong's arrival, the world's strongest, the global richest. And a series of other titles, mysterious and powerful, everyone held Hong in high regard. While everyone was waiting for Hong, a special vehicle from the Dojo of Limits sped to the gate of the elite training camp. Is it Hong? Probably not, the head won't come alone. Then who is it, coming to the elite training camp at this time? Could it be that the head temporarily changed his plans and isn't coming? The special car arrived at the entrance of the elite training camp, stopped, and the door opened. A young man in casual clothes got out of the car and walked towards where the students were gathered. It's Qin Hao. What, Qin Hao? Didn't he already graduate? Why is he back? Didn't they say he went missing? How is that possible? I heard he went out for tempering. Qin Hao is back. Ignoring the discussions around him, Qin Hao walked over to Zhao Ruo, Luo Feng, and Shi Jiang. All of you have become much stronger, Qin Hao said first. Disappearing for several months almost worried us to death, Zhao Ruo said with a hint of complaint in her tone. Luo Feng and Shi Jiang on the side also looked at Qin Hao with concern. I had some insights and couldn't be distracted, Qin Hao replied. How are your preparations? I heard this life and death adventure is in Australia. After the Great Nirvana, Australia has become a monster's paradise. No problem. Shi Jiang and Zhao Ruo were not doing this for the first time. Luo Feng had made rapid progress during this period, and as a psyker master, he had also reached the high-level war god level, feeling very confident in himself. When you finish your tempering, I'll give you a surprise. The few of them chatted nearby, and Qin Hao gained a certain understanding of their cultivation status, while also giving them simple guidance on their power exertion. Qin Hao looked up at the sky, and then a sonic boom sounded. A blurry shadow appeared in the sky above the training camp. After the shadow stopped, a blood-red triangular fighter jet appeared and slowly descended. Hong is here. Everyone, quickly get up. All the god of war teachers and students of the elite training camp, whether sitting on the grass or chatting in small groups in the distance, quickly gathered and stood upright together. Qin Hao stood not far away, watching the red fighter jet gradually descend. After the two inspectors appeared, Hong stepped out of the cabin door. Qin Hao had seen Hong many times, mostly showing a cold and stern side. This time, Hong's appearance fully displayed his temperament, and he was like a long spear. The entire sky seemed to instantly change from morning to night, without a trace of light, leaving only black. Qin Hao knew that this was the effect of Hong's domain. As the world's strongest, who was the only one on Earth to comprehend a domain before, Hong was like a deity in everyone's eyes. Even Thunder God, the world's second strongest, was no match for Hong, an omnipotent deity. This was the common feeling of all the god of war teachers and students in the training camp, while Qin Hao just watched everything silently. As expected, Luo Feng's identity as a psyker master was exposed by Hong. Hong looked in Qin Hao's direction, his eyes flashing with brilliant light. He appeared in front of Qin Hao as if by instantaneous movement. You broke through. Although it was a question, Hong asked it with certainty. Indeed, this tempering brought some opportunities. Qin Hao had no intention of hiding the matter of his breakthrough. The visit from Jia Yi of the military had already attracted the attention of the dojo, and his breakthrough would not be kept secret for long. "Hahata, good," Hong said with a laugh. From Qin Hao, he not only sensed that Qin Hao had become a planetary level, but also felt a sense of danger. "Let's go." Although Hong and Qin Hao's conversation was only a few short sentences, it was heard by the god of war teachers and students who had not yet left nearby. Broke through. Qin Hao broke through again. Has he become a high-level war god? Qin Hao was already a high-level war god when he graduated. This time, he's beyond war god level. How is that possible? How old is he? In a quiet tea room at the elite training camp, Hong sat in a chair, picked up a cup of tea, and sighed. "I didn't expect you to break through so quickly, and also discover another genius in the training camp. However, such a talented psyker master has been hiding it all this time. I'm afraid my revelation has caused him a lot of trouble. I know a little about this matter. It should be related to the 100 billion reward last year." At this moment, Luo Feng was brought in by Inspector Wang. Seeing Qin Hao sitting and drinking tea with Hong, both of them were very shocked. Even though they were already planetary level, Inspector Wang and others still maintained extremely high respect for Hong and were mostly very careful when facing him. However, they did not expect that Qin Hao, having just broken through, would be so relaxed with Hong. "Sit." Hong looked at Luo Feng with interest. "Luo Feng, it seems that revealing your identity as a psyker master this time has caused you trouble. Don't worry. If your god of war is a beyond war god level existence, I guarantee he won't touch a single hair on you again." Although he already knew the identity of Luo Feng's enemy, Hong still wanted to test Luo Feng. "Head, I had a conflict with the son of the vulture and scorpion couple in the wilderness area around Jiangnan Base City and killed him. The vulture and scorpion couple are currently offering a sky-high reward for the killer's identity." Luo Feng honestly said. Qin Hao did not intervene from the side. After receiving Hong's assurance that his family would not be affected, Luo Feng couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. "I originally wanted to give you the surprise after you returned from the Australian continent, but it seems I have to do it a bit earlier now," Qin Hao said, sending Basic Martial Artist 216 forms and Psyker Master 216 forms to Luo Feng via his communicator. "These two secret techniques are enough for you to cultivate now and will allow your strength to advance another level in a short time." Luo Feng saw the two secret techniques that appeared on his communicator, clicked on Psyker Master 216 forms. And after only watching a little, it completely subverted his understanding of Psyker Masters. Luo Feng's cultivation as a Psyker Master had always been self-taught, without a system or many techniques, and even his understanding was relatively limited. Psyker Master 216 forms. Filled in the missing parts for him. Chapter 50. Battle with Hong. Now that you have surpassed God of War, what are your plans? After Luo Feng left, Qin Hao and Hong began to converse like old friends. Continue cultivating. "This time, I gained some opportunities, and it will take some time to digest them," Qin Hao said, directly mentioning the opportunities he had obtained. After all, from the original work and their interactions, Qin Hao had a certain understanding of Hong and felt confident sharing these matters. "It seems the opportunities you've gained this time are significant," Hong said, hesitating for a moment before continuing. "Can you share the opportunities you've obtained? You can exchange them with me based on your contribution." "Yes, I've already given a portion of the resources and shared the secret technique I obtained with Counselor Jia Yi," Qin Hao said, then used his communicator to send a copy of the secret technique he had previously sent to Jia Yi to Hong. "These are what can be shared from the inheritance, but I hope that content above the planetary level is restricted from widespread dissemination." Although he decided to share these secret techniques, Qin Hao still hoped they wouldn't be spread indiscriminately. After all, there were still many people with ill intentions on Earth. "No problem. This content will only be available to core members within the Martial Arts Hall. With these secret manuals, it won't be long before humanity can counterattack the monsters," Hong said. He had only glanced at the general content of the secret manuals Qin Hao shared, but already knew their value. The cultivation methods on Earth now were all developed after the Great Nirvana, and compared to the complete and mature systems in the inheritance, Earth's cultivation methods were very rough. And these 10 Muya crystals are also a part of the resources I obtained. Qin Hao said, not being stingy, and handed the Muya crystals to Hong. The resources left by Source Star King were considerable, but they were not to be taken out all at once. After all, Qin Hao knew about the saying, a little help brings gratitude, but too much brings resentment. No matter how generous he was, everything had to be under his control. This is a list of the resources I currently have. You can directly exchange for anything you need. Hong projected the list directly. Looking at the list, Qin Hao scanned it. Most of the items were useless to him, but were needed by his family. He exchanged some spirits of flora suitable for ordinary people to improve their physique, and finally added a universe-level spaceship. Other matters have been settled. So, when do you plan to take over as inspectors? Let's wait a while. Qin Hao was not averse to becoming an inspectors, but he didn't want to take over immediately. Hall Master, I want to spar with you and have a match, Qin Hao said with a sudden serious expression. This was after careful consideration. While Qin Hao had some understanding of his current strength, it was still a bit vague. More importantly, Qin Hao wanted to observe Hong's application of his domain for reference. Currently, Qin Hao's domain was mostly based on his own exploration and interpretation from secret manuals, and he was still somewhat lacking in complete application. All right, let's go to City 1001, Hong said, then stood up directly and walked out of the room, flying straight towards City 1001. Qin Hao followed closely behind Hong, heading towards City 1001. Seeing Qin Hao catch up, Hong turned his head to look, and his speed suddenly increased. Watching Hong accelerate, Qin Hao also began to gradually speed up, and the distance between them did not widen. The two began a race, and even after reaching City 1001, their speed competition continued. Your strength exceeds my expectations, Hong said to Qin Hao after stopping. Hong's optical computer already showed Qin Hao's strength as Planetary level 3, but his current speed far exceeded that level. Just a bit of good fortune, it's normal, Qin Hao replied casually. Even without his domain, Qin Hao's strength was not inferior to Hong's. Between Planetary level 3 and Hong's Planetary level 7, each level represented a 2x difference, meaning a 16x difference in strength alone. Coupled with Hong's force exertion, the difference was nearly 100-fold. However, Qin Hao was not an ordinary Planetary level 3. His 9x gene represented 9x the strength of a peer, plus 12x force exertion, which could completely compensate for a 100-fold difference. Qin Hao and Hong stood above City 1001, both looking at each other with caution. You can use your full power without worry. I have blocked all surrounding signals. Even satellites cannot observe, Hong said. After hearing Hong's words, Qin Hao launched the first attack. Compared to Hong, Qin Hao still had some gap in experience and temperament. Qin Hao was also very clear about this. In battle, only by striking first could he gain the upper hand. With his long blade unsheathed, Qin Hao's figure quickly disappeared, reappearing in front of Hong. He swung his long blade, fully unleashing 12x force exertion. The martial technique Qin Hao was currently cultivating was no longer ninefold thunderblade, but a blade technique from the Source Star at the Planetary level, which was more aligned with the basic warrior's force exertion techniques and more powerful. Facing the attack, Hong's expression remained unchanged as he thrust his spear. His move was simple yet profound, directly striking the weakest point of Qin Hao's long blade, easily breaking Qin Hao's attack. The battle erupted instantly. After their first clash, Qin Hao and Hong gradually increased their power, becoming entangled in combat. One had received a complete inheritance, with greatly improved force exertion, martial techniques, and movement skills. The other had been immersed in martial arts for many years, effortlessly unleashing various techniques. The evenly matched clash excited both of them. For Hong in recent years, besides sparring with Thunder God, No one else globally could withstand his attacks. For Qin Hao, although he had fought many times in the trial tower, fighting against programmed monsters was completely different from fighting humans. Furthermore, Qin Hao clearly knew that even if both were 7-story trial towers, the gap between Source Star King's trial tower and the virtual universe was not small. After all, behind the virtual universe was the original and an automaton race universe lord, whose restoration of the universe far exceeded imagination. Hong and Qin Hao clashed over 100 times, from the sky to the ground, with the battle continuously escalating. The monsters in City 1001 were all alarmed, rapidly fleeing. Those who fled slowly were caught in the battle's aftermath and instantly turned into blood. "Next, I'll get serious," Hong said after their next clash. After speaking, his aura changed, and the surroundings began to darken, as if light had disappeared. Hong's domain unfolded, and his full power state was activated. Seeing Hong unfold his domain, green light rose around Qin Hao, indicating he had activated the first layer of his wood domain. The appearance of Qin Hao's domain shocked Hong, but this shock was quickly replaced by excitement. The two, with their domains unfolded, clashed once again. It must be said that Hong's power was immense. He comprehended his domain without any guidance, and his application of it was flawless. Although Qin Hao had a deeper understanding of the domain, his application was improved by the Source Star secret techniques. However, the difference in their years of experience was also crucial. Subscribe for more amazing novel audiobooks. Don't forget to like, comment, and share Infinite Novel Audio.